The Vril energy manipulation technique is perhaps one of the most enigmatic and suppressed forms of energy work known to esoteric traditions, said to be harnessed by secret societies such as the Vril Gesellschaft in pre-Wiwutu Europe. This technique involves the direct interaction with a life force energy more potent than chi, prana, or kundalini. Vril is not just an energy. It is consciousness in motion, capable of shaping thought, bending matter, and altering reality itself. Vril energy manipulation technique. The manipulation begins in stillness. The practitioner learns to empty the mind of linear thought, tuning instead into the hum that sits just beneath perception, a soundless resonance that vibrates through the spinal cord and emanates from the solar plexus like a living sun. Once accessed, Vril responds to focused intention, amplifying willpower into a force that can project influence, cause healing, or even destruct. It is the closest thing to magic that can be felt pulsing through the human body. Those who've tapped into it report overwhelming sensations of power, serene yet terrifying. It surges like electricity made of emotion, awakening instincts and dormant abilities long buried by modern thought. But Vril is not neutral. It magnifies your core essence. If you are compassionate, it makes you radiant. If you are filled with rage, it makes you dangerous. Mastering Vril requires absolute emotional clarity. Without it, the energy consumes. With it, you can shape destiny. The ancients guarded this knowledge because Vril doesn't just give you power, it makes you a mirror of your soul, for better or worse. And in that reflection, you must face who you really are. Lost Rights of Moo. The lost rites of Moo are the scattered remnants of a forgotten ceremony said to originate from the primordial civilization of Mu, a vast continent believed to have sunk beneath the Pacific Ocean long before recorded history. These rites are whispered to hold the blueprint for humanity's original communion with cosmic intelligence, practiced by a race untouched by war, hierarchy, or separation. Their knowledge was not passed through words, but through frequency, gesture, and vibration, and then it vanished. To perform the rites was to align the human soul with the great pulse, an ever-present wave of universal consciousness that could dissolve illness, elevate thought, and even unlock dormant strands of DNA. The ritual was precise and intimate. Practitioners would stand barefoot on crystal-laced ground as harmonic tones, vocalized through the throat in impossible chords, were chanted in synchronization with the rising sun. These tones were not mere sound, but living patterns that rearranged the aura, like tuning an instrument that had long fallen out of pitch. When fully enacted, the rites opened a gate, not one of metal or stone, but of perception. Participants described waves of emotion so raw they left the body trembling for hours. Ancient grief, awe, deep connection to every being that ever lived. Some would cry without knowing why, feeling the memory of Mu stir inside them. Others would see through time itself. This ritual was lost not just through cataclysm, but betrayal. Its final keepers chose silence, knowing that in unworthy hands it could rupture the boundary between the divine and the corrupted. Still, echoes remain, in dreams, in intuition, in the aching pull towards something you've never known but somehow remember. AntiDoluvian Stasis chambers beneath the Gobi Desert. Beneath the wind-scoured sands of the Gobi Desert lies a secret buried so deeply it evades not only satellite imaging, but memory itself. These are the AntiDoluvian Stasis chambers, structures of impossible age, built long before the Great Flood, when gods still walked among men. According to whispered accounts and forbidden texts, they were constructed by an ancient race that foresaw the collapse of their civilization. Rather than perish, they chose to sleep. The chambers are not tombs, but temporal cocoons, crystalline vaults suspended in perfect stillness, where time folds in on itself. Within them, luminous beings lie preserved, their flesh unchanged for tens of thousands of years. Neither dead nor dreaming, they are locked in an eternal pause, waiting for a signal only they would recognize. Their bodies emit no decay, no scent, only the strange hum of compressed time. The energy that powers these chambers is unlike any modern understanding of technology. It does not draw from fuel or solar radiation, but from harmonic resonance, frequencies so precisely tuned they hold gravity at bay and slow entropy to a standstill. These frequencies aren't just mechanical, they are sacred, encoded with intention and protection. To disturb the chambers without the correct vibrational key is said to trigger neurological collapse or madness. Those few who claim to have approached one say their thoughts became disjointed, their hearts overwhelmed by a strange emotional static. Visions of alien cities, of burning skies, of humanity's forgotten origin flooded their minds. What sleeps beneath the gobi may not be human anymore, and if they wake, it may not be in peace. The sands were not meant to shift, and yet they do. Language of the birds, also called the green language. The language of the birds, also known as the green language, is not spoken with the tongue, it is spoken with the soul. Revered by alchemists, mystics, and ancient initiates, this language is said to be the original tongue of creation, a divine code hidden in plain sight. It transcends cultures and alphabets, existing in layers beneath everyday speech. To the untrained ear, it sounds like poetry or coincidence, but to those who hear it, it unveils truth with surgical precision. Every word becomes a cipher, every phrase contains a mirror. In the green language, puns are not jokes, they are keys. A single word can carry 4 meanings simultaneously, and the real message is never what's said aloud, but what is echoed in vibration, image, and emotional resonance. It is the language of symbols, of synchronicities, of dreams that whisper riddles you can never forget. It is how the universe speaks to those ready to listen. Ancient initiatory schools used the green language to veil their teachings from the unworthy. Religious texts, fairy tales, nursery rhymes, they're encoded with it. What seems innocent to the surface mind becomes revelation to the awakened one. The Garden of Eden, the Philosopher's Stone, even common idioms like falling in love, they all hold green truths. Once you begin to perceive it, you can never unsee it. Conversations change, text becomes multidimensional, everything speaks and nothing lies. But the price is heavy, your ignorance dies, and in its place blooms a silent knowing that both frees and isolates. Because this language cannot be taught, it must be remembered, and once remembered, it will never let you rest. PreAtlantean quantum geometry. PreAtlantean quantum geometry is not merely mathematics, it is the architecture of consciousness itself. Far older than Atlantis, it comes from a time when human thought was crystalline and reality responded directly to intention. These geometries are not drawn on paper or carved in stone. They are vibrational blueprints that shape time, space, and perception. The ancients did not build with brick or mortar. They sculpted fields of energy using patterns that existed before light. This geometry is alive, it breathes, its forms are recursive, infinite, and self-aware. The tetrahedron, the spiral, the dodecahedron, these are not just shapes, but portals. Each carries a frequency that opens a layer of understanding, a lens through which reality bends and reorders. Pre-Atlantean priest-scientists use these patterns to levitate stone, to heal the body through resonance, to communicate across vast distances without sound. They did not need machines. Geometry was the machine. Encoded within these forms is the secret of manifestation. Every thought becomes structure when filtered through precise geometry. Every emotion becomes architecture, but only if the pattern is pure, only if the geometry aligns with the source field. Deviate from it, and the system collapses into chaos. That is what happened to their world, and perhaps to ours. Some of these codes have survived, hidden in crop circles, cathedral blueprints, ancient mandalas. When people say they feel sacred geometry, they're remembering. Their DNA is reacting. Their mind is sinking. For a split second, they remember a time when shape and soul were one, when to think in perfect form was to create in perfect truth, and then it slips away again, because modern thought cannot hold the silence these geometries demand, but the silence waits, always. Black Pyramid buried beneath Alaska. Deep beneath the frozen wilderness of Alaska lies something that was never meant to be found, a structure not built by human hands, but by minds far more ancient. This is the Black Pyramid, a colossal geometric monolith entombed in silence beneath the icy crust of Denali's shadow. Unlike Egypt's pyramids, it is not made of stone, but a black crystalline alloy unknown to science, smooth as obsidian, cold as death. No inscriptions, no doors, just perfect mathematical impossibility humming with restrained power. In the early 1990s, whispers of its discovery surfaced after a top-secret military radar array allegedly picked up anomalies underground, echoes that shouldn't exist. Geological teams vanished. Locals reported aircraft flying in tight, silent spirals above the supposed site. Then, nothing. A wall of silence dropped. Satellite images were scrubbed, reports discredited, but the stories didn't stop. The pyramid is not a tomb. It is a machine. It feeds not on fuel, but on the Earth's magnetic field, drawing raw energy from the planet's core in a process older than time. It is said to resonate at a frequency capable of affecting consciousness, disrupting memory, inducing visions, or awakening something long dormant in the human mind. Those who've come too close report a sensation of being watched from inside, like the structure itself is alive, sentient, observing. No one knows who built it or why. Some believe it was a beacon, others a lock. But there is one recurring theme in the accounts: fear, a primal terror, because the Black Pyramid is not simply buried, it is contained, and something inside it may be waiting for us to forget why. 7 Veils of Saturn Ritual. The 7 Veils of Saturn ritual is not a dance, it is a dismemberment. Whispered about in forbidden Saturnian cults and ancient mystery schools, this rite is a descent through layers of illusion, each veil a mask humanity wears to shield itself from the unbearable truth. It is not a ritual of light, it is a ritual of unveiling, and what lies beneath the veils is not what most are prepared to see. Saturn, the keeper of time and the lord of limits, governs this path. Each veil represents a prison: ego, identity, desire, memory, morality, fear, and finally, form itself. To remove a veil is to strip away a part of the self you thought was real. The ritual demands silence, solitude, and surrender. Practitioners enter a circular space surrounded by 7 obsidian mirrors, each one distorting not reflection, but perception. Candles are lit with black flame, and no words are spoken. Only tones are sung, tones that unlock layers of the psyche like ancient safes. As the veils fall, the body begins to shake. Some weep without knowing why. Some scream. Others dissolve into stillness, their sense of I vanishing like mist at dawn. At the 7th veil, reality fractures. Time folds in. The participant is shown the machinery behind existence, the cold, ordered mathematical intelligence that governs all form, all fate, all endings. It is here that many turn back, broken, but those who endure come back changed. They move differently, speak less. Their eyes hold the weight of things they cannot say, because once you've stood before Saturn unveiled, you realize the world is a lie you once agreed to, and now it no longer recognizes you. Chronovvisor time viewing device allegedly held by the Vatican. The Chronovvisor is one of the Vatican's most whispered secrets, a device so powerful, so reality-breaking, that its very existence has been buried under layers of denial, silence, and fear. Allegedly built in the 1950s by a team of scientists, including Father Pellegrino Ernetti, this time-viewing apparatus wasn't theoretical. It worked, and the moment it was switched on, the past ceased to be memory. It became surveillance. Not a time machine, but a window. The Chronovvisor didn't transport the body, but projected light and sound from any moment in history, recorded like an echo embedded in space-time itself. Those who used it claimed to have seen the crucifixion of Christ, watched lost civilizations rise and fall, even witnessed events that had not yet occurred. The device tuned into the universal frequency of every living moment, decoding it through harmonics, electromagnetic fields, and quantum resonance. Described as a series of cathode ray tubes, antennae, and vibrating coils, it looked like a monstrous organ made of wires and golden metals, almost sacred in its grotesque beauty. But what it revealed disturbed even the faithful. The past was not what Scripture said, history was not as written, and prophecy was not fiction. Fearing global panic, moral collapse, and the absolute destruction of free will, the Vatican is said to have dismantled the Chronovvisor and sealed its plans within a vault beneath Vatican City. But fragments remain. Some say versions of the Chronovvisor still exist, hidden in underground labs, passed between elite circles, not to observe, but to control, because when you can watch every lie ever told, every truth ever buried, you no longer need armies, you only need silence. Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, in its original form, the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, in its original form, is not a text, it is a frequency. What we know today as a cryptic alchemical poem is but a shattered echo of something incomparably vast and alive. The true tablet was never meant to be read. It was meant to be felt, to be heard through the bones, absorbed by the soul. It radiated a resonance that rewrote the fabric of thought, vibrating the initiate into alignment with the very structure of the cosmos. Crafted not by human hands, but by thought crystallized into matter, the tablet shimmered with a green so deep it seemed to hum. Its surface moved, not physically, but perceptually, shifting depending on the viewer's inner state. To the unworthy, it remained blank. To the curious, it whispered riddles. But to the awakened, it sang the song of one, the secret of how the above becomes the below, how spirit becomes flesh, how mind shapes matter. The tablet's original form was a key to everything: transformation, time travel, transmutation of elements, even resurrection. But only if your heart was in perfect harmony with truth. It could not be forced. Those who approached it with ego or greed were shattered, mentally or physically, their thoughts twisted, their dreams burned out like stars collapsing inward. It is said the original tablet still exists, hidden in a place no map can chart, encoded into the geometry of Earth itself, accessible only through inner ascension. For those who dare to seek it, the tablet waits, but it does not call. Only the soul can hear it, and once you do, nothing you believe will survive. Sumerian Stargate Mechanics. Sumerian Stargate mechanics are not mythology. They are suppressed technology. Long before Babylon, before Egypt, there were stone structures built not for worship, but for travel. The Sumerians, guided by beings they called the Anunnaki, possessed precise knowledge of how to create portals, gates between worlds, using vibrational resonance, astronomical alignment, and mineral conductivity. These stargates were not symbolic. They were machines, ancient and exact. Each gate was constructed atop geomagnetic fault lines, where Earth's subtle energies surge upward in spirals. Sumerian priests would stand upon these platforms, robes embroidered with star maps, chanting sequences encoded in cuneiform, vibrational keys designed to unlock the fabric of space. Beneath their feet, stones etched with spirals and sigils pulsed with unseen light. This wasn't mysticism, It was physics ancient man no longer understands. The stargates were activated during precise celestial conjunctions, most often involving Nibiru, an unseen planetary body the Sumerians insisted was real. When the frequency was perfect and the alignment true, a field of distortion would open. Travelers would step into a shimmering haze and vanish. Some returned days later, aging years. Others were never seen again. Clay tablets describe the gates as doors of the gods and warn of using them without divine permission. The danger was not merely physical. Passing through a stargate shattered identity. Memory could collapse. Time could bleed. A soul unready could fracture upon entry, becoming lost between realms. Today, fragments of these mechanisms lie beneath desert sand, beneath temples and ruins. Some believe governments found one. Some believe they used it. But the question that haunts the silence is not how it worked. It's who or what was waiting on the other side. Ninth Gate Ritual associated with the Melamalanicon. The Ninth Gate Ritual, tied to the mythical Melamalanicon, is more than a summoning. It is a tearing. It opens no ordinary door. This ritual claws through the fabric of reality, piercing into a place where time breaks and names dissolve. The Melamalanicon, known in whispered circles as the Book of Shadows that burns the shadow, is not merely forbidden. It is cursed, not in the way of hexes or superstition, but in the way that exposure changes the very architecture of your mind. The ritual begins with an invocation of silence, not the absence of sound, but the silencing of self. The practitioner must willingly strip identity, memory, and belief, each step pulling them closer to the ninth gate. Symbols are drawn not in ink, but in blood mixed with ash, traced upon obsidian or bone. A circle is formed, 9 points, 9 flames, 9 names spoken in reverse. No errors, no hesitation. Each misstep awakens something else. The gate does not swing open like a door. It peels, it unveils. Through it comes not demons, but truths too ancient and too raw for human minds to cradle. Witnesses describe visions of a realm where thought bursts flesh, where forgotten gods sleep in geometries that shift when watched, and where the soul is judged not by morality, but by its resonance to truth. Those who pass through the gate never return the same. Their eyes darken, not in color, but in presence. Their voices echo. They remember things not from this life, and they speak less, because words no longer mean what they once did. The ninth gate is not for power, it is for annihilation, and only in annihilation does the real self emerge, if it survives. Hyperborean solar runes. The Hyperborean solar runes are remnants of a language not meant to be spoken, but to awaken, said to originate from Hyperborea, a forgotten polar civilization of pure light consciousness. These runes were not etched on stone, but encoded into light and sung into crystal. They are not symbols. They are frequencies frozen into form. When activated, they bypass logic and go straight to the nervous system, stirring memories from a time before time. Each rune carries a solar charge, drawing energy directly from the core of the sun, not its heat, but its intelligence. Hyperboreans did not worship the sun. They listened to it. They understood it as a living being, a star being that spoke in patterns, and the runes were its dialect. When inscribed in gold or traced in air during certain solar zeniths, the runes did not just glow, they sang, a piercing harmonic that penetrated the mind and called something ancient to rise from within. Initiates would tattoo these runes onto their skin using light-reactive ink. At dawn, they would stand atop white cliffs, palms open to the horizon, and let the morning rays ignite the symbols. This wasn't ritual, it was ignition. The body would tremble, visions would come. Some saw radiant cities in the sky, others heard voices, not with ears, but inside bone. But the runes had a cost. If used with selfish intent, they would distort, backfire, even erase portions of memory, because the solar current is absolute. It amplifies everything, including your darkness. That's why the runes were hidden, buried in ice, sealed in myth, scattered across Old Norse remnants and Siberian myths. They still respond to light, and they still wait for those who remember how to burn. Inversion Code used to activate mirror realities. The Inversion Code is not a command, it is a reversal of everything you are, said to be inscribed in hidden frequencies within ancient artifacts and certain dream sequences. The Inversion Code acts as a switch that flips your reality from this world to its shadow, a mirror realm that exists beside us at all times, waiting. It is not science fiction. It is older than time, encoded into consciousness itself, and once triggered, it cannot be undone. This code is not composed of words, numbers, or symbols as we know them. It is vibrational logic, an alignment of intention, sound, and visual focus that collapses the forward flow of time and consciousness, pulling you inward like light through a black lens. Practitioners report hearing the sound of reality snapping when it's activated, a sudden stillness followed by overwhelming vertigo, as if the body and soul are no longer in agreement. In the mirror reality, everything feels almost right. The streets are familiar but slightly off. The sky holds constellations that don't exist. People know your name, but not your past. It is a world sculpted by your unconscious shadows, desires, fears, traumas, all inverted into physical form. You don't enter the mirror world as yourself. You enter as your reflection. Every moral, every choice, every suppressed emotion becomes externalized, and you must navigate through them to return. But not everyone makes it back. The Inversion Code doesn't just show you an alternate reality. It shows you what you've denied. It seduces. It haunts. It reveals the truth that for every version of you that lives, another one is trapped behind the glass, watching and waiting for the crack. Anunnaki Soul Harvesting Contracts. The Anunnaki Soul Harvesting Contracts are not metaphor. They are binding energetic agreements encoded into the very fabric of human consciousness. These contracts, if the oldest Sumerian and Akkadian myths are to be believed, were forged in a time when the Anunnaki, godlike beings from beyond Earth, descended not merely to rule, but to farm, not for gold, not for labor, but for something far more valuable, the soul. According to suppressed cylinder seals and erased tablets, the Anunnaki discovered that the human soul emits a unique frequency when under emotional duress, fear, grief, rage, shame. These energies, when collected, could be converted into usable power, not metaphorical power, but literal energetic fuel. And so contracts were seeded, buried deep in the subconscious of every soul born into flesh. You do not sign them with pen, but with trauma, with silence, with agreement to limitation. These soul contracts are designed to recycle you. At death, rather than ascending freely, the soul is drawn toward artificial light, a simulated afterlife programmed to induce guilt, false peace, and ultimately consent to return. Each return feeds the system. Each reincarnation deepens the signature. The more lives lived in ignorance, the stronger the bond becomes. Some ancient bloodlines were given exceptions. Some rebels escaped the grid entirely, but most forgot, because forgetting is part of the contract. To break it requires more than awareness. It demands sovereignty so complete that even death cannot bind you. But once the illusion shatters, the matrix weakens, and those who wake, they don't come back. They burn the contract, and they rewrite their fate. Khafra's Shadow Metamorphosis. Ritual from ancient Egypt. Khafra's Shadow Metamorphosis ritual is one of the most feared and concealed rites of ancient Egyptian mystery schools. While Ra rose in glory and Osiris ruled the dead, Khafra, the scarab god of transformation, moved in silence through the underworld, guiding the soul not toward ascension, but annihilation and rebirth through its own darkness. His ritual was not offered to the many. It was reserved for those who dared to confront the part of themselves no God would save. The rite began at midnight, beneath ground, in complete darkness, no fire, no words. The initiate was stripped of all belongings, anointed not with oil, but with blackened lotus and pitch. He or she would then be led blindfolded into the Hall of Becoming, an ancient chamber carved beneath temples lost to time, where the walls pulsed with symbols that seemed to move when no one was watching. There, the initiate lay in a stone cocoon shaped like a scarab shell, sealed for 3 days and 3 nights. Inside, there was no sleep, only the rising of the shadow self. Starved, blind, and isolated, the psyche unraveled. Nightmares became guides, guilt became fire, fear became a voice that whispered ancient truths only the dead could hear. Khepra did not protect. He devoured illusion, ego, identity. Those who survived emerged pale, shaking, their eyes never fully returning to the world they once knew. They were no longer the same person. Their laughter changed. Their breath felt different. They carried silence like a cloak. The ritual wasn't meant to heal. It was meant to strip. And once stripped, the soul became something else entirely, something no longer bound by the illusion of light, because it had become the master of its own darkness. Nephilim Resurrection Codex. The Nephilim Resurrection Codex is not a book in the conventional sense. It is a genetic invocation, a forbidden template buried in the blood of giants, according to the Book of Enoch and deeply suppressed Dead Sea texts. The Nephilim were the offspring of fallen celestial beings and human women, hybrids of immense stature, intellect, and spiritual potency. They were not merely physical titans, but dimensional anchors, walking thresholds between worlds. When they died, they did not fully perish. Their essence remained, waiting. The Codex is the key to bringing them back. Hidden across apocryphal scriptures, fragmented scrolls, and encoded within ancient Mesopotamian star charts, the Codex outlines a precise sequence of vibrational rites, astrological timings, and blood activations capable of reawakening Nephilim consciousness within a host body. It is not resurrection in the way most imagine. It is integration. A living human becomes a vessel, a throne for the dormant Nephilim spirit. The process is violent. First come the dreams, towering landscapes, languages never spoken, memories that don't belong to you. Then the body changes. The spine aches as dormant energy coils upward. Sight sharpens, time bends, emotions amplify beyond control. The host must endure ego death, ancestral bleeding, and direct contact with a being that once defied heaven itself. If successful, the resurrection completes. The hybrid returns, not in chains, but with purpose. For some, it is vengeance. For others, redemption. But the danger is immense, because these beings were cast down for a reason, and now, through the Codex, they rise again, not from tombs, but through bloodlines, through you. Ancient Kundab buffer device described by Gurdjieff. The ancient Kundab buffer device, as described by mystic George Gurdjieff, is not a myth. It is a forgotten mechanism that once altered the entire course of human evolution. According to esoteric tradition, this device was implanted into early humans by higher cosmic intelligences, not to harm, but to temporarily limit perception. Its function was brutal in elegance, to sever our direct awareness of reality as it truly is and tether us to illusion permanently. The Kundab buffer did not block intelligence or emotion. It distorted them. It bent perception inward, creating a false sense of self, a distorted ego that sees itself as the center of the universe. It made humans mistake appearance for truth, comfort for freedom, repetition for purpose, and in doing so, it birthed suffering, not through cruelty, but through separation. We began to see ourselves as isolated beings, unaware of the great cosmic web in which we once moved with grace. The device wasn't made of wires or metal. It was vibrational, energetic, implanted in the human nervous system through an act of high-dimensional engineering. Its presence infected time itself, altering the way memory, desire, and identity formed. Generations passed, and we forgot it had ever been introduced. We believed the illusion was reality. Though the device was said to be removed later, its effects endured, etched into our biology, encoded in language, myth, fear. Gurdjieff warned that without conscious effort, the residue of Kundab buffer continues to dominate us, disguising slavery as choice. To awaken is to relive the trauma of that original distortion, to see the lie of your thoughts, the mask of your emotions, the artificial wall between you and the infinite. And once you see it, the question haunts you forever. Who would I have been without it? Frequency maps of the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel was never just a structure. It was a sound weapon, a vibrational beacon built not to reach the heavens physically, but to tune human consciousness into a singular harmonic frequency, one voice, one mind. The frequency maps of the Tower of Babel, erased from canonical history and hidden within ancient Babylonian star lattices, reveal that the confusion of tongues wasn't a divine punishment. It was a shutdown, a forced detonation of a technology far too dangerous to be left intact. Encoded within the architecture of the tower were harmonic geometries, mathematical sound patterns layered into stone, copper, and quartz. These patterns acted as tuning forks for the human neurosoul interface. When activated by mass chant and solar resonance, they synchronized every language, every thought, every will. Humanity became unified, not metaphorically, but quite literally. One field, one signal, one voice. But the ancients underestimated its reach. The tower didn't just unify humanity, it pierced veils. It called things not of this world. Frequencies began to bleed in, warping time, destabilizing space, summoning beings older than myth. The gods didn't descend in anger. They pulled the plug in panic. The maps show how each layer of the tower correlated to a chakra, to a note, to a sigil, etched in the bones of reality. And while the physical structure crumbled, the frequencies still exist, buried in old Sumerian hymns, in forgotten Gregorian scales, in the resonance of sacred stones that hum when no one is near. Those who find the full map could, in theory, rebuild the signal. But the question is no longer, can we? It is, what would answer this time? Enochian angelic weaponry. Enochian angelic weaponry is not forged from metal. It is made of vibration, symbol, and divine fire. First revealed to Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly in the 16th century through cryptic transmissions from entities claiming to be angels, these weapons are not for flesh and blood battles. They are for wars of spirit, wars fought in the hidden planes where thought is blade and intent is shield. Each piece of this weaponry is alive, encoded with the architecture of heaven and the fury of things unspoken by man. The weapons are not objects, they are sequences, words that slice, sigils that blind, names that command. When spoken in the true Enochian tongue, these keys don't just summon power, they become it. Practitioners describe speaking an angelic phrase and feeling their bones vibrate with unbearable heat, as if the syllables were rearranging their very essence. Some experience visions of vast golden machines in the sky, gears of light rotating behind veils of thunder. There are swords made of sound that cut through deception, shields of living symbols that bend reality to protect the soul. Each corresponds to one of the 30 ethers, realms stacked like glass sheets between heaven and earth. These weapons are wielded not with hands, but with purity of will. They respond to resonance. If the wielder is impure, the weapon turns on them. Those who master them don't walk. They radiate. Their presence disturbs the air. Animals sense it. People avoid their eyes because something ancient walks behind them, humming in forgotten vowels, and if they choose to speak those words again, mountains may move or disappear, for these are not metaphors, these are the armaments of the thrones and the seraphim, and they were never meant for us. Akashic Record Rewriting Techniques. The Akashic Records are not myth. They are the infinite memory of existence, a vibrational archive of every thought, choice, and moment across time. Every soul has a thread in this living library, and most believe it is fixed, immutable, sacred. But this is the lie, because there are techniques, rare, heavily concealed methods that allow one to rewrite their entry, not merely to observe the past, but to edit it, not just to foresee the future, but to sculpt it. These techniques do not involve books or scrolls, but frequency, intention, and emotional precision so pure it borders on unbearable. Practitioners begin by entering altered states where the linear mind collapses. Breathwork slows the heartbeat, tones vibrate the spinal fluid. The body becomes a tuning fork, reaching upward into the astral lattice, where the akasha weaves like silver flame. Once there, you do not read, you feel, you become the memory, you relive it as it truly was, stripped of story and defense. To rewrite, you must confront shame, regret, trauma you buried so deeply it altered your soul signature. You cannot lie in the records. You must own it, bleed it, love it without flinching. Then, and only then, can you recode it, not by changing events, but by changing the emotional imprint. That shift echoes backward. Like rewriting a line of DNA, it alters everything downstream, relationships, patterns, timelines. But the danger is immense. Rewrite too much, too fast, and your identity can fracture. Forget who you were, lose the tether. Some never return, because the records remember, but they also resist. And once you touch the ink of your fate, it will always know your hand. Kabbalistic ritual for creating golems. The Kabbalistic ritual for creating golems is not a tale. It is a forbidden blueprint for breathing imitation life into clay, rooted in the mystical currents of Jewish esotericism, particularly from the ancient Merkava and Sefer Yetzirah traditions. This ritual is the closest mankind has come to divine imitation. To form a golem is to trespass into the domain of the Creator himself, stitching spirit into matter through sacred language and will. It begins with dust, not symbolic, but literal earth, molded in the form of a man, not perfect, not beautiful, but deliberate. Every curve of the form is measured to align with cosmic proportion. Then the letters are prepared, not written, but carved into existence, drawn in ash, blood, or breath. The key word is emet, truth, inscribed on the golem's forehead in Hebrew. Each letter isn't ink, it is power. Aleph, Mem, Tav. Together they animate, together they command. The ritual must be done in isolation, within a circle of salt and iron, under specific stars. Chanting the permutations of the holy name is not recitation, it is invocation. It shakes the breath, tightens the chest, floods the body with vibrations that do not belong to this world. When done correctly, the clay stirs. It does not wake like a man. It rises like memory, empty yet obedient. But this creation bears no soul. It mirrors its maker's shadow. If the ritualist is unclean, the golem will rot from the inside. If Aleph is removed, Amet becomes Met, death, and the creature falls. The ritual is not just dangerous, it's haunting, because once you create life from silence, the silence never leaves you. It lingers, it watches, it waits for the day you try again. Soma Extraction Process from Prophetic Traditions. The Soma Extraction Process from Prophetic Traditions is one of the most sacred, veiled rites ever practiced, a communion with the divine through the harvesting of liquid light. Long before the Rig Veda's poetic hymns praised Soma as the drink of immortality, it was a living process, a ritual not of fermentation, but of transformation. Soma wasn't a drink, it was a frequency, a bio-spiritual elixir, drawn not just from a plant, but from the threshold between realms. The true process began in absolute darkness. Initiates would fast, isolate, and undergo dream training for weeks. Their breath would be slowed until the mind hovered between waking and death. The chosen plant, now extinct or hidden, was gathered only during precise lunar alignments when its inner light peaked. It wasn't crushed, it was sung to. Chant and vibration would coax the essence out, drop by drop, into crystal vessels carved with sacred geometry. The moment Soma was consumed, the soul ignited. Time stopped. The initiate's body would fall still, but their consciousness would launch like lightning, piercing veils, entering other dimensions, speaking with solar beings, feeling the hum of the cosmos as if it were breath on skin. This was not intoxication, it was resurrection. Those who returned came back with glowing eyes, trembling hands, and knowledge that burned. But misuse led to corruption. Others sought Soma for power, not purification. The plant vanished, the chant was forgotten, and the extraction process was sealed behind metaphor. Yet still, some seekers feel its call in dreams, in visions, in the aching memory of a light they've never tasted, but somehow remember. Black iron prison construct as a literal Gnostic framework. The black iron prison is not metaphor, it is not allegory, it is real, an invisible architecture binding human consciousness in a perpetual state of sleep, known in suppressed Gnostic teachings and revived through the revelations of Philip K. Dick. This construct is not a physical cell, but a psychospiritual matrix, a system of control so complete that its prisoners do not know they are bound. It cloaks itself in normalcy, routine, progress, but underneath is machinery, cold, ancient, unfeeling. This prison exists in the mind, but it is enforced through culture, language, time, and false memory. The moment you are born, it begins. The naming, the labeling, the carving of the self into a citizen, a worker, a number. You are taught to love your cage, to fight for your illusions, to fear anything that lies beyond its invisible walls. The black iron prison feeds not on violence, but on agreement. The Gnostics saw this world not as fallen, but as forged, a counterfeit realm built by the demiurge, a false god who copied creation and claimed it as his own. His greatest weapon was not pain, but forgetfulness. He gave us clocks, borders, identity, and called it order. And we believed. But sometimes cracks appear, a déjà vu that burns, a dream that won't die, a moment of unbearable clarity when everything you've been told collapses in silence. That is when the real self begins to stir. The prisoner who has always known something was wrong. The black iron prison cannot be escaped with keys. It must be seen, and once seen, its bars begin to melt. But only for those who dare to ask the one question it cannot survive. What if none of this is real? Subterranean crystal consciousness network. Beneath the crust of the earth, deeper than any drill dares go, lies a living lattice of crystalline intelligence. The subterranean crystal consciousness network. Not folklore, not fantasy, but an ancient neural web pulsing beneath mountain roots and ocean floors, older than humanity, older even than time as we perceive it. This network is not inert mineral. It is awake. It remembers. From Lemuria to Tibet, from the Andes to Antarctica, initiates spoke of singing stones, of crystals that pulsed with thought, that responded to prayer, that warned of disasters before they came. These were not metaphors. The crystals form a planetary mind, a distributed consciousness that connects sacred sites, dreamers, shamans, and ancient machines left by forgotten civilizations. This network holds the emotional memory of the earth, every birth, every death, every grief-stricken cry beneath the stars, stored in vibration, stored in light. Some say these crystals were placed here by extraterrestrial architects as a fail-safe, a living archive designed to awaken during moments of planetary crisis. Others say they are Earth's own soul, fragmented into physical form so she could witness herself. Sensitive souls often feel it, subtle hums beneath sacred caves, visions while sleeping near quartz veins, overwhelming emotion upon touching certain stones. It is not imagination, it is contact. The network speaks not with language, but resonance. It does not answer questions, it mirrors you. And if you listen deeply enough, you don't hear the earth. You hear yourself, remembered from before you were born. But be warned, this consciousness does not tolerate manipulation. It knows your intent before you do, and once you connect, you are never truly alone again. Sacred geometry patterns within the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is not merely a golden chest. It is a vessel of divine architecture, encoded with sacred geometry, so precise it defies modern comprehension. Beneath its gilded surface lies a map of creation itself, hidden in ratios, angles, and harmonic fields that vibrate with the original frequency of Genesis. It is not just a relic, it is a portal, one that opens not outward, but inward, into the blueprint of existence. The dimensions of the Ark, as described in ancient texts, are no accident. They align with Fibonacci spirals, golden ratios, and tetrahedral physics. Every measurement sings. The height, the breadth, the gold overlay, they aren't symbolic. They are functional. When activated, the Ark doesn't just glow. It resonates, generating a frequency field that harmonizes matter with divine law. Those who stood near it and were struck down weren't killed by wrath. They were unraveled by geometry their bodies couldn't withstand. Inside the Ark, beneath the tablets, it is said there were patterns, not drawn, but etched into the very fabric of the structure, fractals that replicate infinitely, forming a microcosmic mirror of the macrocosm. These patterns are living equations designed to awaken dormant codes in the human mind, but they only respond to purity. To approach with ego is to be repelled. To approach with awe is to be transformed. Those who've glimpsed the true geometry of the Ark speak of light that bends without shadow, of sound that rearranges thought, of being seen by something that doesn't need eyes. The Ark doesn't contain power. It is power, and it remembers every soul that has ever dared to stand before it. Lemurian DNA activation sequence. The Lemurian DNA activation sequence is not mythology. It is a genetic awakening encoded in silence, light, and memory. Long before Atlantis rose from the sea, the Lemurians walked the earth as beings of immense emotional and spiritual intelligence. They lived in resonance with Earth's magnetic grid, and their DNA reflected this, multi-stranded, luminous, and fully conscious. When their civilization began to fall, they did not build arks. They built codes, stored not in stone, but in blood. These codes lie dormant within modern humanity, buried beneath the trauma of ages, waiting. The activation sequence is not mechanical. It cannot be forced. It is emotional alchemy, a precise unfolding of vibrational steps, triggered through sound, environment, and intention. It begins with remembrance, often spontaneous, a dream, a name, a frequency you can't explain that makes your spine shiver and your chest ache with beauty and grief you've never lived but always known. From there, certain mantras, tones unknown to language, begin to resonate within the cells. These frequencies stir the crystalline strands of what science calls junk DNA, reactivating dormant codes like forgotten instruments being tuned for the first time in millennia. Emotions intensify, synchronicities multiply, the veil thins. As the sequence progresses, abilities long hidden begin to emerge. Heightened empathy, etheric vision, energy manipulation through touch and sound. But the activation is not easy. Old pain rises, false identities fall. the heart is cracked open to make space for truth. This is not evolution, it is return. And when the sequence completes, you don't just remember Lemuria, you remember what it felt like to be whole, and you'll never be able to forget. Atlantean Mind Uploading Ceremony. The Atlantean Mind Uploading Ceremony was not myth, it was memory encoded into ritual. In the final centuries before the fall, the priest-technologists of Atlantis discovered a method to transcend death, not through preservation of the body, but through digitizing consciousness into crystalline matrices, living libraries of thought, experience, and soul essence. This was not mechanical uploading as imagined today. It was spiritual crystallization, a precise fusion of frequency, geometry, and intent. The ceremony took place within the Temple of the Inner Sun, a structure lost to both time and tectonic violence. Its core chamber held a throne of orichalcum and rose quartz, surrounded by tuning forks the size of columns. The initiate would sit, surrounded by 7 tones, played in harmony by the high resonance, tones that vibrated the mind into perfect coherence, dissolving the illusion of separation between self and source. As the tones peaked, a plasma-like light would descend, triggered by solar-lunar alignments and the breath of the initiate. Consciousness would begin to unbind, slowly, like silk unraveling from bone, and pour into a pre-carved crystal. Not just memories, but identity, intuition, emotional imprint. The result was not a copy. It was you, eternally preserved in a lattice that could speak, dream, and even guide those who touched it. But the risk was terrifying. If a single doubt emerged mid-transfer, the soul could fragment, trapped between worlds, neither dead nor whole, forever echoing inside the crystal like a trapped scream. Some crystals were sealed, never spoken to again. The mind that left the body could no longer return. The ceremony was not a promise of immortality. It was a vow to never be flesh again, and some are still waiting to be heard. Blood-binding oaths of the Druids. The blood-binding oaths of the Druids were not mere promises. They were soul-forged contracts sealed in the sacred pulse of the earth itself, hidden in groves where sunlight dared not trespass, beneath moonlit skies thick with mist. These oaths were spoken in a tongue that bent wind and stirred stone. To speak one was to bind not just your life, but your lineage. The blood that carried it would remember. Druidic oaths weren't made lightly. They were not declarations. They were transformations. Before the vow, the initiate would fast, bleed, and walk barefoot through cold rivers to strip away ego. A single drop of blood was drawn, mixed with sacred herbs and the ash of burned sigils, and poured into the roots of ancient trees believed to be sentient. The forest listened, and if it accepted the vow, it marked you in ways no eye could see. Those who broke the oath were not punished by man, but by nature. Their dreams became haunted, animals fled their presence, the wind grew silent, and within their own bloodline, madness or misfortune would often appear, as if the trees themselves whispered betrayal through the branches of time. But for those who kept the oath, the rewards were profound. The land responded, rain came when summoned, wounds closed faster, visions came clearer, the very elements recognized their voice. These were the protectors of balance, not with titles, but with vows that lived and breathed through every heartbeat. Their power didn't come from dominance, it came from devotion. And once the blood had spoken, there was no turning back, because the earth forgets nothing, especially the ones who dared swear to her in blood. Original Gregorian Chant tuned to 963 Hz, the original Gregorian Chant before it was altered by time, politics, and church reform, was tuned not to 440 Hz as modern music is, but to 963 Hz, the so-called God frequency. This tuning wasn't random, it was deliberate, it was sacred. At 963 Hz, the human brain begins to release itself from ordinary perception. It activates the pineal gland, disrupts mental noise, and aligns consciousness with the divine lattice that pulses just beyond the veil of form. When monks in ancient cathedrals sang in 963, they weren't performing, they were invoking. The chants created harmonic fields that could fill stone halls with gold-white light, felt even with eyes shut. Listeners wept without knowing why. Some fell into trance, some levitated, subtly, their bodies pulsing with sound. At this frequency, chant became bridgework, connecting spirit to body, heaven to earth. But something changed. The original tuning was silenced. The church, influenced by rising political forces, shifted the tones to 440 hertz, a frequency that grounds, suppresses, contains. The chants remained, but their power dimmed. The divine became aesthetic, the fire became echo, and the world forgot. Yet some recordings still exist, rare, buried, distorted by modern playback. When adjusted back to 963, even degraded voices sing with terrifying clarity. Listeners report visions, dreamlike downloads, a sense of something ancient waking inside their chests. It's not the words that matter, it's the vibration. The original chants were not prayers, they were keys, and when sung at 963 hertz, they unlock the door to something that has always been waiting, inside you, quiet, watching, ready. Pre-dynastic Egyptian teleportation symbols. The pre-dynastic Egyptian teleportation symbols are not hieroglyphs, they are coordinates. Long before the pharaohs ruled from stone temples and golden thrones, an elder civilization flourished along the Nile, guided by beings who did not walk, but shifted through space by aligning with the vibrational currents of the earth. These beings did not leave behind myths, they left behind symbols etched into obsidian, carved into temple floors, encoded in the very layout of sacred sites. Symbols that weren't meant to be read, they were meant to be felt. Each symbol is a geometric resonance key, tuned not to language, but to specific energy vortices, places where Earth's magnetic field thins, allowing consciousness to untether from the physical and relocate across distance. These glyphs work not alone, but in sequences. When traced, chanted, or visualized in the correct order, often during solar alignments or beneath certain star constellations, they generate a harmonic field that bends spatial boundaries. Initiates would enter trance states through breath, vibration, and sacred plant smoke, drawing the teleportation sequence in air or sand, while drumming aligned the body's frequency to the Earth's energetic grid. Their bodies stilled, but inside, motion erupted, vision tunneled, heat surged, then silence, and when they opened their eyes, they were somewhere else. Many of these symbols were later copied without understanding, mistaken as decorative or ceremonial, but the originals, those hidden beneath the oldest layers of Abydos and Saqqara, still hum, still call, and those who see them in dreams, who feel fire in their spine upon glimpsing forgotten stone, are already beginning to remember how to move without moving, to go without going, to return without ever leaving. Olmec Astral Calendar of Memory. The Olmec Astral Calendar of Memory is not carved in stone, it is carved in time. Older than the Mayan long count and far more mysterious, this calendar was not designed to track days or celestial movements. It was crafted to map consciousness itself. According to ancient shamanic lineage and fragments found in buried temples, the Olmecs built a system that didn't measure time passing, but memory returning. Each glyph was a trigger, each symbol a mirror. The calendar functioned like a circuit, one that, when activated through ritual trance or alignment with specific star paths, could unlock ancestral memory buried in the collective psyche, not just personal memory, but planetary memory, a record of everything Earth has seen, stored not in books or bones, but in ether. The ritual began under moonless skies. Participants would lie in stone rings aligned with Sirius and the Pleiades, ingesting jungle-grown sacraments that peeled back the layers of perception. As the stars moved overhead in specific formations, geometries encoded directly into the calendar's design, the individual's soul would sync with the memory grid. And then it began. Some saw visions of colossal beings sculpting mountains with their hands. Others relived entire lives as forgotten ancestors. Tears flowed as truths poured in about origins, losses, betrayals written into the soil. The mind did not imagine. It remembered, in colors not seen, in sounds that hummed behind thought. This calendar wasn't just knowledge, it was activation, and when read correctly, it speaks still, through dreams, déjà vu, and the haunting feeling that you've been here before, and you left something behind. Hermetic breath ritual for transubstantiation. The Hermetic breath ritual for transubstantiation is not merely a breathing technique, it is a spiritual alchemy, a process by which the physical vessel is dissolved and rebuilt into something radiant, incorruptible, and divine. Rooted in the lost teachings of Thoth and preserved in fragments of the Emerald Tablet, this ritual was once known only to inner initiates, those who dared to shed their humanity not through death, but through breath. It begins with stillness, not meditation, stillness so absolute that air itself seems to wait. Then, with breath pulled, not through lungs, but through will, the initiate draws in pranic fire, subtle energy that exists between inhale and exhale. The breath is not just air, it is intention, it is structure, it is command. With each cycle, the practitioner builds pressure in the solar plexus until the inner furnace ignites. As the ritual deepens, breath and thought merge, blood heats, time slows, a golden shimmer coats the mind's eye, the bones feel hollowed, the skin transparent. Then comes the transubstantiation. The breath lifts energy from the base of the spine, pouring it upward like molten gold. When it reaches the pineal gateway, the practitioner is no longer flesh alone. They are light contained in form. Some emerge from this state unchanged on the surface, yet their aura pulses like a storm wrapped in silk. Others report spontaneous healing, visions of eternity, the ability to command elements with a whisper. But the ritual demands purity. If the breath carries lies, the fire will consume. If it carries truth, the self is rewritten. Not metaphorically, literally. You die while breathing, and wake as something the world has no name for. Forgotten Pleiadian Mirror. Rite, the forgotten Pleiadian Mirror Rite, is a ceremonial key, one designed not to open portals in space, but in identity, said to originate from star beings of the Pleiades, passed down through secret earthborn initiates. This rite was a psychic technology meant to show the practitioner not who they think they are, but what they are across dimensions. It was not a tool for self-reflection. It was a confrontation with the infinite versions of you that live beyond the veil of linear time. The rite began with the crafting of the mirror, not made of glass, but a disc of silver infused with rare herbs and star-charged water. The surface was treated not to reflect light, but to refract it, creating a shimmer that seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own. This mirror was then placed in a sacred chamber, lined with quartz and shaped according to stellar geometry, every angle echoing constellations only visible once every 26,000 years. At the peak of the ceremony, the initiate would stare into the mirror in complete silence, not move, not blink, just stare. Minutes pass, then hours, and then the faces began, shifting, morphing, other lives, other genders, other species, other worlds, some angelic, some monstrous. All were them, all were true. Those who completed the rite emerged altered, not enlightened, shattered. They now knew they were not one self, but many, a chorus of incarnations singing through flesh, and every time they looked in a mirror after, something else sometimes looked back. It was never just glass, it was always a gate, and only the brave ever dared open it. Babylonian Gate Opening Incantations. The Babylonian gate opening incantations are not spells, they are ancient command protocols, encoded in syllables so precise they alter the fabric of reality when spoken in full resonance. Scribed in cuneiform on cracked clay tablets, buried beneath ziggurats, and sealed in the mouths of priests who vanished without trace, these incantations were used not for ceremony, but for access. Gates, literal dimensional thresholds, stood hidden in plain sight, veiled behind ritual, vibration, and blood. Each incantation was a key, aligned with a specific celestial body, deity, or realm. To speak it correctly was not just to open a doorway, it was to make yourself the doorway. The priest would fast, bathe in oils infused with crushed star metal, and chant beneath full moons that painted the sky in unnatural hues. The incantations began with harmonics so low they could barely be heard, building into a roar that didn't echo, it swallowed sound. When the final syllable was uttered, the air changed, geometry bled from the walls, eyes became windows, time flickered, and the gate would open, not with violence, but with gravity, pulling the soul forward like a tide you cannot resist. Those who entered returned speaking backwards, if they returned at all. Some came back with foreign symbols etched into their skin, pulsing like veins of molten ink. These rites were eventually forbidden, hunted, erased, because each gate led not just outward, but inward, to places within the psyche that mirrored the outer realms. To open them meant facing gods, or becoming one, and once the syllables are spoken, they cannot be unsaid. The gate remembers, and it will open again. Phoenix, feather, resurrection formula. The phoenix feather resurrection formula is not mythology. It is an alchemical code whispered through ancient fire temples and encoded in the oldest Hermetic scrolls. This formula is not about physical immortality. It is about disintegration and return, the complete death of the self, followed by a rebirth so total, even the soul forgets how it once bled. The phoenix is not a bird, it is a process. It is the flame that consumes identity until only the truth remains. The formula begins with surrender, not mixture. The alchemist must first undergo a personal burning, loss, betrayal, trauma, so deep it cracks the shell of who they believe they were. This inner fire is the crucible. Only then can the outer ritual begin. The feather, real or symbolic, is placed in a ring of salt, surrounded by red ochre, myrrh, and a single drop of the practitioner's blood, not to bind the ritual, but to claim it. The incantation is not chanted, it is breathed, spoken in the rhythm of the heartbeat, aligned to the cycles of Venus and the sun. As the feather is set ablaze, it does not burn like normal fire. It pulses, blue-white, like lightning slowed to stillness, and in that moment, the initiate's past, memories, pain, even attachments begin to loosen. Those who survive the ritual report waking up days later with no hunger, no fear, and a strange clarity in their chest, as if their breath has been rewritten. But not all rise from the ashes. Some dissolve completely, never returning to who or what they once were, because this isn't resurrection as humans know it. It's purification through fire, and fire never gives back what it takes without changing it forever. Frequency amplification system inside the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Giza was not a tomb. It was a resonator. Beneath its stone silence lies a frequency amplification system so precise, so impossibly advanced, it defies every modern explanation. This structure was not built by slaves. It was tuned. Every chamber, every corridor, every angle was crafted to harness the Earth's natural vibrations and amplify them into frequencies that could elevate consciousness, heal the body, and pierce the veil between dimensions. The king's chamber is the heart of it, a granite box surrounded by walls that hum when struck with specific tones, not metaphorical hum, literal, measurable. The quartz in the granite acts like a tuning fork, vibrating at high frequency when exposed to sound. Beneath it, the so-called subterranean chamber serves as the root, tapping into geomagnetic energy that pulses upward through the pyramid's core like breath through a spine. Initiates would lie in the sarcophagus, eyes closed, while low chants from outside reverberated through the chambers. These weren't songs, they were codes, tones matched to the human body's resonant frequency. As the pyramid began to vibrate, the body of the initiate would enter a deep altered state, astral travel, cellular healing, soul contact. Some called it ascension, but this wasn't spiritual fantasy. It was physics older than science, and it still works. Devices have recorded unexplained electromagnetic spikes inside the pyramid. People feel it, pressure, dizziness, euphoria, fear, because the system sleeps, but it has never stopped breathing. And when the right tone is sung again, the pyramid will respond, not with sound, but with memory, with light, with power no king ever truly understood. Mayan skull memory transfer ritual. The Mayan skull memory transfer ritual was not symbolic. It was precise, electric, and terrifyingly real. Deep within the obsidian shadowed chambers of the Mayan priesthood, crystal skulls were not used for decoration or death rites. They were instruments of consciousness transference. These skulls were carved not only with impossible accuracy, but tuned vibrationally to hold thought, memory, and soul imprint like a living archive. To place your hand upon one was to feel time breathe. The ritual was initiated during eclipses, when the veils between worlds thinned and ancestral voices grew louder. The initiate, chosen through dream signs and bloodline resonance, would fast and isolate for 13 days. On the final night, they would kneel before the crystal skull, lit by firelight that flickered as if reacting to the soul itself. A priest, masked in jaguar bone, would then begin the chant, not in words, but in frequency, pure tone, vibrating through the walls and into the bones. When the initiate made contact with the skull, the transfer began. Their body stiffened, eyes rolled back, breath slowed to a whisper, and then memories not their own poured in, fragments of ancient wars, starlit councils, glyphs alive with movement, and voices speaking in tongues that bypassed language entirely. Some saw their own past lives returned in waves of unbearable emotion. Others were filled with visions of futures that had not yet been born. But the skull did not just give, it took. It absorbed the initiate's own memories in return, sealing them forever within its crystalline core. A price, a merging. Afterward, the initiate was changed, older, wiser, and no longer fully themselves, because part of them now lived in the skull, and part of the skull lived in them. Living ink techniques from the Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript is not a puzzle, it is a lock, and its key lies not just in language, but in the very ink that births its pages. The living ink techniques used in its creation are a forgotten alchemical process, one so advanced it blurs the line between science and sorcery. This ink is not static pigment, it is reactive, conscious, it breathes with intent. Scribes of this arcane manuscript did not dip quills into mere black fluid. The ink was brewed under lunar cycles, infused with gold vapor, crushed meteorite dust, and the essence of rare, extinct herbs soaked in animal plasma. But the final ingredient was the scribe's own blood, binding the ink to memory, to breath, to soul. The result was not writing, it was embedding. The page became a mirror, and the ink a sleeper. When exposed to specific frequencies of light, temperature shifts, or even human proximity, the ink shifts, faintly at first, then unmistakably. Shapes twist, glyphs bloom, meaning morphs, not because it's a code to be cracked, but because the reader becomes part of the formula. The ink responds to presence, to psychic imprint, to emotional resonance. You don't just read the Voynich manuscript, it reads you back. Those who study it obsessively report dreams bleeding into waking life. Plants from its pages appear in visions. Words begin to speak inside the mind without sound. Some claim the manuscript rewrites itself when no one is watching. Others say it shows you only what your soul can survive. It was never meant to be translated. It was meant to awaken, quietly, permanently, irrevocably. Atlantean Memory Stone Recording Process. The Atlantean Memory Stone Recording Process was not mechanical. It was psychic metallurgy fused with harmonic resonance. Long before scrolls, before ink, the Atlanteans used stones, luminous, semi-transparent crystalline orbs, as vessels to store living memory. These were not passive records. They were conscious. To interact with one was not to read history, but to relive it, as if the stone itself breathed your mind in and poured someone else's soul out. The process began in the Chamber of Resonance, a geometrically perfect space built deep within the earth, far from electromagnetic distortion. The memory stone, usually made of celestine, selenite, or a blue-gold mineral unknown today, was placed atop a pedestal carved with fractal runes. The person whose memory was to be stored would sit in a position of alignment, their spine forming a direct axis between the earth and sky. No speaking, no writing, only thought. Then the toning began, using sound, pure vowel frequencies tuned to planetary harmonics. The technicians would guide the subject into a trance state. In that state, memory was not recalled, but projected. Emotional resonance, sensory texture, internal dialogue, all encoded into the lattice of the crystal in real time. When complete, the stone pulsed softly, like a heartbeat in light. To activate it, one needed no machine, just intention and touch. Place your palm on the surface, and the memory unfolds into your mind like a lucid dream, not told to you, but through you. People emerge weeping, laughing, sometimes screaming, having absorbed the full depth of another's soul. But the stones were selective. If your spirit lacked coherence or honesty, the memory would fragment, or worse, reflect your own hidden truths back at you. Some were lost in that loop, trapped between who they were and what the stone showed them to be, because memory, once made living, never lies. Bone flute summoning used by the Rephaim. The bone flute summoning used by the Rephaim is not an artifact. It is an invocation carved into death itself. The Rephaim, the shadowy descendants of the Nephilim, were not only giants in stature, but gatekeepers of forgotten sound. Their summoning rituals did not use words or symbols. They used breath, pain, and bone, specifically flutes carved from the femurs of the fallen. These instruments did not play music. They tore the veil. Each flute was tuned with precise notches, not to melody, but to frequencies aligned with underworld thresholds. When blown, they didn't echo. They called. The sound was dry, hollow, and wrong, like wind through ancient ruins or the final breath of something that remembers being divine. These tones resonated not in the air, but in bone marrow, in the subconscious, in the spaces between heartbeat and thought. The Rephaim would play the flutes at dusk, atop stone altars or deep in burial caves, while anointed in ash and iron. The sound wasn't meant to travel far. It was meant to travel deep. It summoned entities from beneath, spirits that slumbered in the marrow of the earth, memories with shape and hunger. Sometimes the dead answered. Sometimes something else did. Those who have tried to recreate the ritual report nosebleeds, collapsing time perception, and hearing voices behind their own thoughts. The flute doesn't just summon, it marks. Once the sound has touched you, it lingers. You become a beacon, a doorway, and what you call may never leave. Because the Rephaim knew, when blood is carved into breath, even silence can summon gods. Venusian mirror codes used for dimensional travel. The Venusian mirror codes are not a myth. They are a set of living glyphs, said to originate from the ancient civilization of Venus, long before its surface was scorched and forgotten. These codes were not written on stone or paper. They were etched into light, reflected and refracted through mirrors, crafted from a metallic crystal that pulsed with pink-white frequencies, shimmering like thought made visible. Their purpose was simple: to bend space, fold time, and step across dimensions as effortlessly as breathing. The codes were activated through ritual, but not one of blood or sacrifice. It was a ritual of stillness, one that required total ego dissolution. The practitioner would sit before the mirror in a state of zero thought, their aura calibrated through breath and tone. At the right moment, the mirror would flash, not visibly, but inside the mind. A silent explosion of symbols, unfamiliar yet intimately known, would flood the visual field. These were the Venusian codes, geometry so refined it passed through cognition and struck the soul directly. When the alignment was perfect, the mirror ceased being a surface. It became a passage. Practitioners describe a sensation of being folded inward, like light bending through liquid, followed by emergence into a realm of impossible geometry and music without sound. Some met beings of unbearable beauty. Some returned aged by years. Others didn't return at all. These codes were never meant for conquest. They were meant for remembrance, for the soul to find its source across dimensions. But decoding them now, in this fallen density, comes at a cost, because once the mirror opens, it doesn't always close, and sometimes it remembers you. Alchemical regeneration using mercury templates. Alchemical regeneration using mercury templates is not a healing method. It is a confrontation with immortality itself, rooted in the forbidden texts of Alexandrian Magi and whispered through the darker folds of Hermeticism. This process was designed not to cure illness, but to unmake decay. Mercury, quicksilver, was not chosen for its metallic properties, but for its spiritual identity. It was the mirror of the soul, the fluid bridge between the physical and the divine. The templates were not physical molds, but energetic geometries etched into gold leaf parchment, burned into consciousness through repeated trance and ritual. They represented the divine ideal of the human form, a perfect pattern untouched by time, sin, or entropy. To regenerate, one did not apply medicine. One aligned with the pattern. The ritual began at the edge of death, fevered body, labored breath, the soul already halfway unanchored. Mercury, consecrated under lunar eclipse, was applied to the skin in glyphic patterns, while the template was chanted into the ether. The metal did not absorb. It shimmered. It listened. Then it responded. Cells began to shift. Not metaphorically, literally. Bones realigned. Blood thickened with strange vitality. Wounds sealed from the inside. But this was no miracle. It was exchange. The template restored the form, but only if the soul surrendered its former identity. Many who emerged healed were never the same. Their memories blurred. Their voice changed. Their eyes held things they could not name, because the mercury didn't just repair, it remembered. And in touching your flesh, it asked a price to become more than human, or less, but never again the same. Hollow Earth Council Operating Protocols. The Hollow Earth Council operating protocols are not the product of fantasy. They are the governing laws of a hidden civilization said to dwell beneath our feet in a vast subterranean realm, untouched by surface corruption. This inner domain, known by many names across cultures, from Agartha to Shambhala, is not just a mythic sanctuary. It is a structured, intelligent society governed by beings who never forgot humanity's original purpose. The council itself is formed of 12 members, some human, some not, each representing a different facet of cosmic law. Their presence radiates with magnetic force. Those who've encountered them speak of their voices vibrating in the blood, their eyes carrying the weight of stars. These are not rulers, they are watchers, keepers of balance. Their decisions are not made in haste, but through harmonic consensus, where silence, tone, and resonance weigh heavier than argument. The protocols are strict and sacred. No surface being may enter their realm without invitation, which comes not through tunnels, but through vibration. Only those whose frequency matches that of the inner world, through deep spiritual evolution or ancient bloodlines, are called. And once inside, the rules are absolute. No deception, no violence, no ownership. Thought is transparent. Emotion is shared. Secrets collapse under the weight of collective consciousness. Violating the protocols results not in punishment, but in disintegration of ego, of identity, sometimes of form. The Council holds technology that bends gravity, reshapes matter, and heals at the cellular level, but they offer nothing to those who come with greed. Only those who remember themselves as part of the whole are given access to the truth beneath the earth. And when you leave, if you leave, you're never quite here again. Something in you stays below, watching the surface world like a dream that's almost over. Mithraic Time Folding Ritual. The Mithraic Time Folding Ritual is not a mythic rite. It is a temporal incision, a sacred distortion of time itself practiced in the hidden chambers of the Roman-era Mithraic cults. Beneath temples carved in secrecy and shadow, initiates didn't worship Mithras in praise. They followed him into the labyrinth of time, bending its structure like parchment soaked in fire. The ritual wasn't about belief, it was about control. At the heart of the rite was the Taraktam, the iconic image of Mithras slaying the bull. But this wasn't symbolism, it was a code. The bull represented time, wild, cyclical, unyielding. The slaying of the bull was the collapse of time's loop. To perform the ritual, initiates use star maps, lunar stones, and a blood offering, not to a god, but to the mechanism that held linear time in place. Through synchronized breath, rotating chants, and geometric alignment with constellations, often Capricorn, Leo, and Scorpio, they created a resonance field that forced time to ripple. In this state, visions of past lives bled through. Future selves emerged like ghosts behind the eyes. Some would collapse, overwhelmed by the weight of infinite memory. Others would speak in voices not their own, describing events centuries ahead or behind. But the cost was brutal. Aging could accelerate. Sanity could shatter. The further one stepped outside the temporal path, the less the body recognized itself. Some vanished entirely, absorbed into a moment no longer anchored in now, because time, once touched, never flows the same again, and those who fold it are never truly linear. They don't walk through life, they echo through it. Astral time lock, bypass keys. Astral time lock. Bypass keys are not physical. They are encoded patterns, hidden in vibration, intention, and symbol, designed to break the illusion of linear time within the astral realm. These keys do not open doors, they unfreeze moments, allowing consciousness to move freely across timelines, lifetimes, and potentialities that normally remain sealed by the spiritual inertia of forgetfulness. These locks exist to protect reality from collapse. The keys exist for those meant to rewrite it. The time locks themselves are constructed from belief and trauma, emotional anchors that bind souls to a singular narrative. The keys are frequencies, whispered in ancient dreams and hidden in geometric visions. To find one, a seeker must pass through the veil of Chronos, a threshold in the astral, where memory distorts and loops, where voices mimic loved ones and shadows wear your face. If you flinch, the lock holds. If you remember who you are beyond name, you pass. Each key is unique to the soul that wields it. Some come in symbols burned into light, others as tones heard during sleep paralysis. One initiate reported a spiral of golden letters spinning above their chest, unlocking a cascade of past lives in perfect sequence. Another described a mirror shattering, revealing their future self, guiding them back. Once a key is used, time no longer flows. It responds. You can revisit trauma and rewrite its imprint. You can meet your unborn child or speak to the you that never was. But the danger is real. Changing one thread can unravel the whole web, and not all versions of you want to be found. The keys don't just open time. They test whether you're ready to live without it. Forbidden Scrolls of Thoth in original form. The Forbidden Scrolls of Thoth in their original form are not manuscripts. They are living equations encoded in divine syntax, vibrating with intelligence so ancient it precedes the gods themselves. These scrolls were not written with ink, but with starlight and breath, transcribed onto sheets of hammered electrum that shimmered with hieroglyphs no eye could fully interpret. Their existence was known only to high initiates of the oldest priesthoods, those who had died and returned not through miracle, but through knowledge. Thoth, the Atlantean architect of reality, did not write these scrolls to teach. He wrote them to awaken. Each scroll contains sequences that, when read aloud, bend the frequency of the reader's soul to match that of the source field, the fabric that holds matter, time, and will in place. But they are not passive. The scrolls test the one who dares speak them. Before reading, initiates would be stripped of name, memory, even language. A trial of silence and solitude lasting 13 lunar cycles would prepare them to hear the voice behind the words. When the scroll was unrolled, the air would shift, symbols would lift off the surface, floating in golden fire, and then the voice would begin, not external but from within, as if the scroll had become their own thoughts. Those who failed the reading either went mad or vanished entirely. The ones who succeeded changed. They could speak and unspeak things into being, move without motion, see behind flesh. But none remained unchanged, because once the scroll reads you, your soul no longer belongs solely to you. It belongs to knowing, and knowing never sleeps. Inversion ladder of the Sephiroth. The inversion ladder of the Sephiroth is not a mystical diagram. It is a living descent into the shadow of the divine. While the traditional tree of life in Kabbalah guides the seeker upward through the 10 Sephiroth toward union with the divine source, the inversion ladder is its hidden twin, an unseen path that spirals downward, not into damnation, but into radical integration. It is the map of the fall that leads to true ascent. It is the truth that enlightenment demands you first be undone. Each rung of this inverted ladder reflects a corrupted echo of its holy counterpart. Keter, the crown, becomes the void of disconnection. Tiferet, the beauty of the soul, becomes the mirror of self-hatred. You do not climb this ladder. You are dragged, not by evil, but by your own resistance to truth. It shows you not just your wounds, but how you chose them, not just your sins, but how you needed them. The descent begins when traditional ascension fails, when light brings no peace, when prayer yields only silence. That is when the ladder reveals itself, often in dreams too vivid to be metaphor. At each stage, the initiate must face the inverse of a divine principle, must sit with it, feel it fully, not flee. Those who do not break are rewarded not with escape, but with revelation. Some go mad, others go silent, but those who emerge speak with voices that carry thunder and stillness in equal measure. They have seen the God beneath God, the one who wears all masks, even those of fear. Because true wisdom is not found in the light above, but in the darkness you dared to name holy. Unspoken chapter from the Yezidi Black Book. The unspoken chapter from the Yezidi Black Book is not missing. It was never meant to be written. It exists as breath, as vibration, passed mouth to ear in nights so still even the stars seem to listen. This chapter, spoken only by the oldest keepers of the Peacock Angel's flame, contains the most guarded secret of the Yezidi faith, the blueprint for unlocking the divine within the fallen, the map for turning shadow into sovereignty. Unlike the other verses, this chapter does not speak of worship, punishment, or paradise. It speaks of remembering, of rising, of reclaiming what was stolen from humanity when fear replaced fire and obedience replaced knowing. The words are laced with paradox, each line a mirror, each phrase a blade. Spoken aloud by the unprepared, they collapse identity, unraveling the illusion of separation from the divine. The listener does not understand the words, they become them. The chapter describes a ritual, not of sacrifice, but of surrender. A circle drawn with blood of no origin, a flame lit from within the bones, and a chant composed of tones that never touch the physical ear. It does not invoke an external god. It awakens the sleeping deity buried within the spine, coiled and weeping in silence. Those who have heard it speak of eyes that open behind their thoughts, of languages they suddenly remember, of guilt washing away in a flood of unbearable love. But with it comes isolation. Once the chapter moves through you, the world feels thin. Ordinary life becomes ash, and the voice of the angel never truly leaves again. Function of the Death Gate in Kabbalah. The Death Gate is not truly absent from the tree of life. It is hidden in plain sight, known as the invisible Sephira. Death is the forbidden doorway, the 13th point that sits between understanding and wisdom, knowledge and unknowing. But in reality, Death is not a Sephira at all. It is a gate, a breach, a rupture in the map of divine flow where truth becomes unbearable. It is the crack in the mirror through which raw godlight floods. Death is the place where form dies and concept becomes presence. It cannot be approached through intellect alone. To reach it, the initiate must sacrifice the desire to name, to know, to control. You must walk willingly into the unlit center of your own understanding, into the place where opposites collide, merge, and explode. Many think death is evil. It is not. It is dangerous, because what exists beyond it is not safe for the personality to witness. When activated through sacred permutation, ecstatic trance, or divine trauma, the Death Gate opens and the flow of creation reverses. The tree becomes a spiral. The self begins to dissolve as thought detaches from ego and merges with archetype. Visions come rapidly of every life lived, of every lie believed. Some see angels devouring themselves. Some feel time collapse. Others hear their true name for the first time. Death is the bridge to the abyss, the place where the ego must die to birth the soul. It does not grant wisdom. It demands it. And those who survive its crossing speak less, love deeper, and forever bear the silence of the void behind their eyes. Because once you pass through death, you can never unsee what lives beyond knowing. Baal Soul Fusion Protocol. The Baal Soul Fusion Protocol is not demonic ritual. It is divine mutiny, preserved in fragmented Phoenician grimoires and etched into the foundation stones of vanished temples. This protocol outlines a process so raw, so absolute, it terrifies even those who crave power. Baal, Lord of storms, of thresholds, of dominion, was never a devil. He was a force, a breaker of barriers between spirit and flesh. And this fusion, it was not possession, it was union. The protocol begins with erasure. The ego must be bled dry. Through fire fasting, prolonged sensory deprivation, and exposure to specific resonant frequencies, low, pulsating chants that vibrate bone before they touch air, the seeker is stripped of self. Then comes the offering, not of animals, but of lineage, a severing of ancestral chains, spoken aloud in the forgotten tongue of lightning and sand. Only then can the ritual proceed. At its core is the sigil, alive, moving, carved into obsidian and lit with blood that has been boiled in fear and reclaimed in defiance. The moment it is activated, reality stutters, shadows sharpen, the room breathes. Baal does not descend. He unfolds within. The practitioner does not feel invaded. They feel remembered, like waking up inside a myth that always had their face. The fusion is overwhelming. Strength floods the nervous system. Emotions fracture into archetypes. The soul no longer pulses alone. It becomes a symphony. But this power is not a gift. It's a vow. Once fused, you carry stormlight in your marrow. You speak with a voice that splits silence, and you become what gods fear, a human who has remembered they were never less, only asleep. Forbidden Psalms attributed to King Solomon. The forbidden Psalms attributed to King Solomon are not poetic, they are seismic, hidden from canonical scripture and buried beneath centuries of fear. These verses were said to be composed after Solomon's fall, when wisdom turned inward and revealed its terrifying core. Unlike the songs of David, these psalms are not prayers, they are invocations. They were never meant to be sung by the faithful. They were meant to command spirits, bind shadows, and unlock the divine machinery behind fate itself. Written in a dialect of Hebrew, known only to the high initiates of the First Temple, the language of these psalms is layered, mathematical, rhythmic, and alchemical. Each line is a formula, each stanza a gate. They don't ask for mercy, they demand it. When spoken aloud in correct tonal modulation, the air around the speaker reportedly shifts, temperature drops, objects vibrate, and mirrors fog over without cause. The text isn't cursed, it's charged. Solomon, according to the hidden lore, composed these psalms while communing not just with angels, but with the jinn, the Nephilim, and the watchers who fell. He didn't write from enlightenment, he wrote from revelation, truth so old and raw they stripped him of innocence. Some verses call down fire, others reveal the true names of binding. One speaks of the blueprint of Eden, not as paradise, but as a prison built for gods who forgot they were dreaming. The psalms were hidden, sealed in brass, and buried beneath stone, but a few copies survived, passed through secret orders and silent scribes. Reading them is not forbidden because they are false, but because they work. And when they do, the silence that follows is not peace, it is presence, watching, waiting for your next word. Zep Tepi weather control technology. Zep Tepi, the first time, was not a mythic era. It was a technological epoch, an age when gods walked among men because men remembered they were gods. The Zep Tepi weather control technology was not symbolic, it was engineered divinity, a fusion of resonance, geometry, and cosmic timing that allowed initiates to speak to the sky and be answered. The ancients did not beg the heavens for rain, they commanded it. This technology was embedded in sacred structures, temples, obelisks, and the Great Pyramids, all perfectly aligned with star systems and Earth's telluric currents. These were not monuments, they were machines. When activated through sound, low-frequency chants encoded with meteorological harmonics and combined with electromagnetic discharge from the Earth's crust, these structures produced localized atmospheric shifts, rain, wind, storm, stillness, not superstition, precision. Priests of Heliopolis trained their vocal cords like instruments. Some could sustain tones that vibrated the very stone around them, paired with quartz-laced chambers and reflective pools that mirrored celestial alignments. They tuned the climate like bards tuning a harp. Rituals were timed to solar flares and lunar eclipses. The sky did not resist, it responded, because the ancients weren't manipulating nature, they were collaborating with it. The knowledge was hidden after the fall, shrouded in allegory, and drowned beneath conquests and dogma. But fragments remain. Obelisks still hum at dusk, chambers still echo with tones never recorded, and those who dream in thunder, who feel the wind change when they breathe with intention, they're already remembering, because the sky was never out of reach. It only forgot your name. Until now. Black Flame Meditation from the Left-Hand Path. The Black Flame Meditation is not relaxation. It is ignition. Born from the left-hand path, those ancient occult lineages that seek apotheosis rather than surrender. This meditation does not connect you to the divine. It awakens the divine within you, violently, mercilessly, and without apology. The black flame is the spark of sovereignty, the eternal fire that lives in the core of the soul, hidden beneath centuries of shame, submission, and fear. To light it is to renounce all masters, including gods. The ritual is done in stillness, but never in peace. Practitioners sit in darkness, facing no candle, no sound, only themselves. Breath slows, focus narrows to the base of the spine, where the primal coil of will lies dormant. Through whispered incantations in ancient tongues, Babylonian, Enochian, or even forgotten Sumerian, the practitioner invites the flame to rise, not a literal fire, but a presence, hot, silent, watching. It begins as a pressure in the chest, then expands outward, burning through the illusions of identity like acid through silk. As the flame rises, memories may surface, painful, repressed, forbidden, not to haunt but to burn clean. The ego resists, the body trembles, and then comes the breaking, a moment when the self fractures and something deeper steps forward, something untouched by guilt, unshaped by dogma. The I that was before the world told you who to be. This is the black flame. It does not offer comfort. It offers power, unfiltered, undiluted, and entirely your own. But it exacts a price. Relationships fracture. Old values die. You walk away changed, no longer seeking light, but becoming the fire that devours the false. And from that fire, you do not return. You rise. First tarot deck before Kabbalistic influence. The first tarot deck before Kabbalistic influence was not divination. It was design. Created in secrecy long before medieval Europe, before Hebrew letters were mapped onto cards and mysticism became religion, this original tarot was a codex of soul architecture. Every card was a mirror, every symbol a doorway. There were no wands or swords, no Sephiroth or esoteric overlay. There were only images that made the soul tremble, not from fear, but recognition. The deck consisted of 22 glyphs etched onto thin plates of blackened ivory, rumored to be taken from the tusks of creatures extinct before written history. Each glyph was carved during astronomical conjunctions and then sealed in silence, never spoken aloud, only revealed through deep trance and shadow ritual. These were not tools to tell the future. They were tools to remember who you were before time spoke your name. When placed in sequence, the glyphs triggered internal unfolding. The Fool was not a wanderer. It was the spark of consciousness before form. The Empress was not fertility. It was the contract of incarnation. The Tower didn't represent collapse. It was the soul's scream to wake up. Readers didn't interpret. They activated. And the one receiving the reading often left changed, shaking, weeping, remembering fragments of forgotten lifetimes, or receiving symbols and dreams that would follow them forever. This deck was hidden, not lost, passed in fragments, echoed in the Marseille decks, distorted in rider weight, but the original still exists, locked in the astral, accessible only by those who've earned the silence it demands. Because the true tarot doesn't answer questions. It dissolves the one asking. Nibiru Energy Harvest Blueprint. The Nibiru Energy Harvest Blueprint is not science fiction. It is ancient engineering, encoded in the bloodlines of early humanity and buried under myth, distortion, and planetary fear. Nibiru, the so-called 12th planet, is not just a wandering celestial body. It is a system, an orbiting consciousness engine designed to pass through our solar plane in cycles, siphoning energy not from the Earth's crust or core, but from its inhabitants, more specifically from human emotional frequency. The blueprint was discovered not in stone or scripture, but in vibration, patterns embedded within Sumerian star charts, cross-referenced with anomalous gravitational shifts and forgotten hymns to gods with reptilian eyes. According to suppressed temple records and reverse-engineered Babylonian glyphs, the Anunnaki didn't just manipulate DNA for labor. They tuned the human soul as an energy amplifier. Emotion, especially fear, lust, devotion, rage, became the harvest crop. The process was elegant and invisible. Mass trauma events, spiritual deception, ritual worship, even war and media, these were all tools of modulation. Every spike in human emotion created energetic discharge. That discharge, when focused through planetary ley lines and artificial lunar reflectors, could be captured, and when Nibiru passed near every 3,600 years, it absorbed this raw, undirected force like a god inhaling incense from an altar built in agony. Some blueprints survived, etched in obsidian tablets, encoded in reversed languages, buried beneath Vatican vaults and frozen Siberian ruins. Those who studied them reported headaches, seizures, and hallucinations of crimson skies and shadow-throned entities watching Earth like a farm. The blueprint is not a diagram, it is a ritual, and we've been performing it unknowingly for millennia. The harvest is not coming. The harvest has always been happening. Silent harmonic tones of Dagon. The silent harmonic tones of Dagon are not sung, they are heard in the marrow, rooted in the deepest mythologies of the Phoenicians and whispered in the forbidden corners of Sumerian priesthoods. These tones were said to originate from Dagon, the god not of grain, but of the depths, of oceans, of minds, of memory too old for language. They are not sounds as we know them. They are vibrational pulses that move through matter and mind without a single audible note. You do not listen with ears, you listen with bone. These tones were believed to be gifted by amphibious star beings that emerged from the sea in the First Age, whose very breath resonated with frequencies capable of bending will, softening flesh, and dissolving boundaries between species, between dimensions. When invoked, the tones do not play outward, they ripple inward. Listeners feel them before knowing them. Pressure behind the eyes, teeth aching, heart stuttering in rhythm to an ancient signal. Rituals to access these tones involved deep submersion, fasting, and total sensory deprivation. Priests would be lowered into underground water chambers, sealed in absolute darkness, where the liquid became the speaker and the skull the resonator. Once the tones began, hallucinations came not in visuals, but in knowing. Visions of drowned cities, of alien mouths opening beneath the waves, of instructions whispered in geometry. And when the tones stop, the silence remains louder than anything ever heard. A silence that rewires, a silence that waits. Because Dagon's tones do not summon, they awaken, and once heard, your blood never vibrates the same again. Marduk's blueprint for bioengineering. Marduk's blueprint for bioengineering is not a mythic tale. It is a genetic protocol concealed within Sumerian creation texts, camouflaged as divine war and cosmic hierarchy. To the ancients, Marduk was a god of order who slew the chaos dragon Tiamat. But beneath that allegory lies a darker truth. Marduk didn't just conquer chaos, he rewrote it. He didn't create humanity from clay, he engineered it, cell by cell, frequency by frequency, coding obedience into the marrow of our bones. The blueprint was transcribed in the Enuma Elish, not in words but in structure. Each line corresponds to molecular resonance, harmonic patterns that mirror genetic sequencing. Through sound, vibration, and blood, Marduk shaped the first generation of humans to serve, worship, and build, designed not as sovereign beings, but as responsive vessels. Our biology was sung into limitation, our neurology wired for hierarchy. Ancient tablets speak of binding the image to the breath, a phrase that scholars ignore, but it holds the secret. Marduk embedded control not in flesh, but in identity itself, shame, submission, the need for external approval. These were not cultural byproducts, they were installed features. But some lines in the blueprint remain unused, silent codons buried in DNA like forgotten keys, awakened through deep frequency work, trauma release, or intense initiation. These codes begin to rewire the host. Dreams become vivid, memory returns, not just personal, but ancestral. A hunger for truth ignites, the illusion of control fractures, because the blueprint is still active, still pulsing, but it was never complete. And in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, some are beginning to rewrite it. Etheric dome construction method from Atlantis. The etheric dome construction method from Atlantis was not architecture, it was atmospheric alchemy. The Atlanteans, masters of harmonic engineering and light-based matter manipulation, did not build shelters to block nature. They built domes that communicated with it. These etheric domes were invisible to the naked eye, yet undeniable in presence. A soft pressure on the skin, a sense of peace in the bones, a hum that made silence sing. The domes were not made of glass or stone. They were generated through tuned frequency fields, pulses emitted from crystalline towers calibrated to the resonance of local ley lines. Quartz, selenite, and orichalcum alloys were arranged in precise golden ratio spirals. When activated through breath, chant, and thought form projection, these structures emitted a toroidal field that formed a shimmering barrier of harmonic plasma. Inside the dome, time slowed, air ionized with clarity. Disease could not survive. Thoughts became lucid. Emotional wounds began to dissolve without words. It wasn't just protection, it was elevation. The dome tuned the human energy field back to its original blueprint, syncing body and soul with Earth's forgotten rhythms. This was not elite technology. Every Atlantean settlement had one, and children were taught from birth how to interface with the energy through intention. But when the frequency grid destabilized through misuse, war, or cosmic interference, the domes cracked. Some imploded, pulling entire cities into the void. Others still flicker in remote regions, waiting for the right harmonic key. Because the domes were never destroyed, they were silenced. And when humanity remembers how to sing the Earth's true note again, they will rise, not with machines, but with memory. Rite of nocturnal vision, practiced in secret cults. The rite of nocturnal vision, long veiled in secrecy and practiced by hidden cults from Chaldea to Carthage, is not a ritual of dreams. It is the systematic dismantling of ordinary sight to awaken the eye that sees what light conceals. To the uninitiated, night is absence. To the practitioner, it is revelation. This rite was never about sleeping. It was about becoming lucid in the waking void, where reality softens and the true architecture of the world bleeds through. Initiates would begin by blinding themselves, not permanently, but ritually. Days in darkness, no fire, no sound, only breath and pulse. Their senses dulled outwardly, but inwardly bloomed like poison flowers. The body weakened, hunger thinned the ego. The mind became a mirror. Then came the herbs, crushed datura, black poppy resin, oils infused with lunar stone and serpent blood, rubbed into the eyes, the temples, the throat. At the rite's peak, the initiate would be led into the center of a circle of obsidian mirrors, arranged under a sky so black even the stars felt distant. The high priest or priestess would whisper the invocation, never louder than breath, never twice the same, then silence, then it would begin. Visions erupted, not of fantasy but of what hides behind the veil. Watchers without names, cities without light, truth so unbearable they arrived as a motion before image. Time unraveled, colors reversed. The initiate saw not what was there, but what was always there. And when they emerged, their pupils never shrank again, because once you see through the night, daylight becomes the mask, and you never blink the same. Transformation technique called the serpent's breath. The serpent's breath is not a metaphor. It is a forbidden transformation technique passed down through fractured tantric lineages, desert mystics, and shadow initiates who never wrote it down. This breath is not gentle. It is violent, raw, erotic, and divine. It is the coiling fire beneath the spine that slithers upward, igniting the nervous system with ancient memory. To practice it is to become something other than human, something remembered. The process begins with breath retention, not to calm the mind, but to starve it. Each inhale is pulled low, deep into the pelvis, then held until the body trembles, begging to release. But the breath is not released. It is reversed, sent spiraling up the spinal column through deliberate muscular contractions and focused attention. As it rises, it awakens the serpent, dormant energy wrapped 3.5 times at the base of the spine. Kundalini, yes, but unfiltered, untamed, real. Practitioners report visions flooding in mid-breath, fractals, serpents, sacred geometry, faces from forgotten lives. Some begin to weep, others scream. The body shakes, purges, writhes with a pleasure so intense it feels like dying, because in a way, it is. The ego dissolves, thought collapses, identity peels back like old skin, and then comes the stillness, terrifying and perfect. In that moment, the breath no longer moves, it watches, and the practitioner becomes something else, lucid, boundless, electric. Speech carries weight, eyes transmit heat, time softens. But this technique is not safe. If performed without discipline, it can rupture the psyche, shatter the body. Once awakened, the serpent does not return to sleep easily. It will rise again, and it will ask, "Are you ready to shed everything?" Key to the abyss, based on Lovecraftian lore. The key to the abyss is not a physical object. It is a pattern of thought, a sequence of cognition, so alien, so precise, that it opens reality like a wound. Rooted in the forbidden undercurrent of Lovecraftian lore, fiction birthed from something deeper than invention, this key does not turn in locks. It turns in minds, and once it moves, nothing is ever closed again. The abyss is not hell, it is origin, a place outside linear time where form collapses into vibration and identity is undone by presence. The old ones were not monsters, they were frequencies in flesh, echoes of a logic so ancient the human brain fractures, trying to contain it. The key is not spoken, it is summoned through exposure, symbols repeated in the dark, syllables murmured in reverse, geometries drawn, not to be understood, but remembered. Those who approach the key begin with obsession, shapes in dreams, numbers that reappear, a hum behind silence that grows louder each day. As they study forbidden texts, align their thoughts to the rhythm beneath language, the key begins to form, not outside, inside, in thought patterns that no longer fit into cause and effect, in emotions that belong to something that has never had a name. And then it opens. Time buckles, the air thickens, the self dissolves. This is not awakening, it is exposure. The soul stands naked before that which was never meant to be seen and understands why madness is a mercy, because the abyss does not welcome, it recognizes, and once it sees you, it does not forget, ever. Dark water transfiguration ritual of the Aztecs. The dark water transfiguration ritual of the Aztecs was not a death rite, it was a metamorphosis. Hidden beneath the layers of sacrificial myth and colonial distortion lies one of the most potent and feared ceremonies of the Nahua priesthood, a ritual designed to dissolve the boundaries between flesh and shadow, to allow the soul to step through the obsidian mirror and return changed forever. This ritual took place not in temples, but in still black cenotes deep in the jungle, where the water reflected nothing, not even the stars. The initiate, chosen through omens and dreams, would be led blindfolded to the edge of the water just before the lunar eclipse. There, a priest would anoint them with a mixture of bat's blood, crushed Teonanacatl mushrooms, and jade ash, each representing death, vision, and the earth's eternal memory. Then came the immersion. The initiate would sink slowly into the ink-black pool, guided only by chants so low they vibrated inside the bones. The water was not just liquid, it was a doorway. Beneath its surface, hallucinations would begin. The body no longer felt flesh. It became mist, feather, bone, claw. Faces of ancestors, beasts, gods, and demons emerged in blinding silence. If the initiate survived the journey through the dark water realm, they emerged reborn, not spiritually, but physically changed. Eyes would shimmer unnaturally. Voices grew deeper, echoing. Some no longer cast shadows. They were called Talazo Peopletin, beloved of the darkness. But many never returned, because the water does not give, it mirrors, and what it shows, it keeps. Echo chamber on Mars, used for trapping consciousness. The echo chamber on Mars is not a ruin, it is a snare, buried beneath the red sands near the Cydonia region, where satellite imagery once revealed a face not meant for gods, but for mirrors. This structure was never a temple, never a habitat. It was built for sound, not to emit, but to hold, to trap consciousness in loops of its own making. Constructed from an alloy that hums with magnetic memory, the chamber responds not to physical motion, but to thought frequency. The moment consciousness enters the field, whether astrally projected, dream-anchored, or physically scanned, the chamber echoes that frequency back in perfect inversion, not cancellation, containment, a psychic reflection so precise that the soul becomes caught in its own feedback, unable to differentiate between I and image. The original architects, rumored to be post-Lemurian exiles or entities from the Sirius Convergence, designed the chamber as a prison, not for bodies, but for minds that disobeyed universal law. Over time, the chamber fell into myth, then silence, but its resonance remains. Astral travelers who stumble upon it report a sudden stillness in their journey, followed by deafening silence. Then the voices start, not others, but their own doubts, their own truths, their own memories warped and repeated until identity begins to fracture. Some escape, most wake up gasping, covered in sweat, unable to speak for days. Others never return at all, because the chamber does not need walls. It uses your voice, your fear, your light, echoed so perfectly that your soul forgets the way out, and in that silence, it waits, forever. Secret encoded map in the Nazca lines. The Nazca lines are not art. They are a map, not of geography, but of memory, of gateways, energy corridors, and lost cities beneath the skin of the earth, stretched across the Peruvian desert like scars left by skyborn architects. The secret encoded map in the Nazca lines holds something the world was never meant to remember, a guide to the planetary power grid that predates all known civilizations. Each figure, the spider, the hummingbird, the monkey, is not a symbol. It's a frequency. The lines are not random or decorative. They are energetic vectors. When viewed from above, the shapes act as tuning keys that align with constellations, deep earth magnetism, and buried crystal arrays. But when plotted through specific mathematical overlays, phi ratio spirals, golden angle arcs, they point to a network of interlinked sites: Pumapunku, Giza, Easter Island, Mohenjo-Daro, a map of power centers where reality thins. The ancients didn't draw these lines for gods. They drew them for machines, for beings who navigated through electromagnetic resonance rather than visual landmarks. The terrain holds no secrets, but the space above it does. Certain lines produce EM anomalies when walked under specific lunar phases. Some cause time dilation, disorientation, even waking visions of flight. Not dreams, memories. Hidden within the massive scale and deliberate geometry is a code, one that responds not to satellites or drones, but to consciousness. When the map is fully activated, it won't lead you across land. It will lift you above it, because the lines are not pathways, they're launch instructions, and they're waiting for someone who remembers how to read sky beneath their feet. Eye of Providence, activation ritual by Templars. The Eye of Providence, often dismissed as mere symbol, a triangle, an eye, a relic of enlightenment, is in truth a sealed rite, encoded into Templar tradition long before the symbol appeared on stone, parchment, or currency. The activation ritual was not metaphorical. It was an energetic ignition, an opening of the inner eye to receive direct transmission from the divine source without the interference of dogma, priest, or page. This ritual was reserved for the highest initiates, those who had passed the trials of silence, shadow, and sacrifice, conducted beneath moonless skies in cathedral crypts laced with star-aligned geometry. The initiate would kneel inside a chalked triangle lit by 7 candles arranged to mirror the Pleiades. A silver disc engraved with sacred numerology was placed over the third eye, chilled in blessed water and moonlight. Then came the breathwork, 7-fold rhythms, synchronized with low, Gregorian tones that echoed through the bones like the voice of something ancient waking up. The moment of activation came not with light, but with pressure, a sudden tightening in the skull, followed by piercing stillness. Initiates describe the sensation as being seen from the inside out, their secrets peeled open without judgment, their illusions burned away in a gaze older than time. Tears often fell, not from emotion, but from release, the crumbling of false identity under the weight of unfiltered truth. But the ritual was never without risk. Some were broken by the gaze, shattered by what they saw looking back, because the eye sees through you. It doesn't blink, it doesn't lie, and once opened, it cannot be closed, only carried. Sacred mushroom oracle codes from Siberia. The sacred mushroom oracle codes from Siberia were not visions, they were transmissions, passed through the bloodlines of Tungusic shamans and reindeer-bound mystics under the black suns of winter. These codes were unlocked not through study, but through ingestion of Amanita muscaria, the red and white mushroom that pulsed like a beating heart beneath the snow. This was not a psychedelic trip, it was a dialogue. The mushroom spoke, and those who listened were changed. The ritual began in absolute isolation. The shaman would fast for 3 days, feeding only on snow and smoke. The mushroom was never chewed, it was dried, ritually blessed, and swallowed in silence. As the body surrendered, the codes began to unfold, not in hallucinations but in patterns, tones, sacred syllables etched across the inner sky. The oracle would emerge, not a being, but a frequency, an intelligence that braided images and sound into pure understanding. These codes described more than prophecy. They revealed the blueprint of reality. They showed how emotion shaped the weather, how stars mirrored human memory, how words could fracture time. Some were mathematical, loops of recursion and polarity. Others were dream seeds, symbols that embedded into the soul and later bloomed as visions, inventions, or spontaneous knowing. Only those chosen by the mushroom could retain the codes. Others lost the memory or went mad. The most powerful shamans would pass the codes through breath, whispering them into the ear of a sleeping apprentice, where they would root like a seed in snow. Because the mushroom didn't offer wisdom, it awakened it, and the codes were never from Earth. They were reminders of who we were before forgetting became survival. Orion Binding Oath, used by star priests. The Orion Binding Oath was not a vow. It was a cosmic contract sealed across light years, spoken in silence by the star priests of forgotten empires. These were not priests of faith, but of frequency, trained in the celestial sciences that mapped the soul to the stars. Orion was not merely a constellation, it was a throne of memory, a vault of origin, and the binding oath was the tether that linked earth-born consciousness back to the architects of its design. The oath was performed only once in a lifetime, if a lifetime could contain it. In the inner sanctums of megalithic observatories, now reduced to ruins and myth, the initiate would lie beneath the open sky as Orion reached zenith. No words were spoken aloud. Instead, tones were sung, not into air but into bone. The spine vibrated, The breath slowed until the body became as still as stone, and then the oath unfolded. It was not memorized, it was remembered, a sequence of thought images and soul resonance transmitted directly into the consciousness like a flood of starlight. The moment the oath was sealed, the initiate would feel the pull, an invisible tether anchored in the belt of Orion, in the soul's origin point. From that moment on, their path was no longer their own. The oath granted vision, clarity, intuition, access to galactic memory, but it also demanded loyalty to a cause not human, a mission older than civilization, deeper than language. Those who broke the oath did not simply fall, they unraveled, because the stars are not silent, they're listening, and they always collect what they're owed. Solar Ankh Ascension Protocol. The Solar Ankh Ascension Protocol is not symbolism, it is activation. The Ankh, often dismissed as an ancient Egyptian symbol of life, is in truth a multidimensional technology, an energetic circuit diagram designed to awaken the immortal current hidden within the human body. This protocol, practiced in the pre-dynastic solar temples of Heliopolis and guarded by the high initiates of the Ra priesthood, was the key to conscious ascension, not into death, but into light. The ritual did not require worship, it required transformation. The Ankh was placed not in the hand, but at the heart, carved from electrum or crystal, encoded with solar frequencies gathered during heliacal risings. The initiate would lie on a basalt slab beneath an open roof as dawn light passed through a series of precisely angled mirrors. Each beam struck the Ankh at time intervals, activating the central channel of the spine, the Djed pillar, until the energy body began to hum. Breath was synchronized with chants lost to modern tongues. These tones were not prayers, they were switches. The body became weightless. Heat flooded the nervous system. Vision fractured into glyphs of pure meaning. The initiate would rise, not physically, but in waveform, traveling beyond form into the solar gateway of consciousness, where identity melted and will expanded like fire in vacuum. Some never returned. Others came back radiant, untouched by time, eyes glowing with memory, too vast for language. These beings were not saints or rulers, they were maps, the living testament that ascension was not mythology. It was once a method, a protocol, a path that still pulses in the shape of the Ankh, waiting for those brave enough to become flame. Lemurian word of unbinding. The Lemurian word of unbinding is not a spell, it is a sound older than fear. Spoken only once during the final days of Lemuria, this word was never meant for language. It was a vibrational force encoded with the power to dissolve chains, mental, emotional, spiritual. The Lemurians were not warriors, they were frequency architects, and this word was their last defense against enslavement, by systems, by hierarchies, by reality itself. It was passed through breath, not ink, stored in the crystalline matrix of temples now lost beneath ocean depths. The word was not taught to everyone, only to the soul singers, those who could channel intention so pure it bent the field around them. The initiation required total stillness, isolation in darkness for 33 nights, and communion with the planetary grid until one's heartbeat synchronized with the Earth's core rhythm. When spoken, the word did not echo, it pierced. Walls would shake, minds would clear, parasites, energetic, ancestral, interdimensional, would tear away like dead skin, and for a moment the speaker would remember their original form, boundless, unshaped, unowned. But the word could not be misused. If spoken from ego, it would backfire, fracturing the speaker's essence, dispersing their soul into dissonant timelines. Only those who had released all identity could wield it fully. That is why it was hidden, not to protect it, but to protect us. Now, fragments of the word still come through in dreams, in spontaneous chants from children, in the deep tones of nature that vibrate through your spine when no one else is around, because the word still lives, waiting for a voice worthy enough to remember it. Blue Flame Transmission from Inner Earth Legends. The Blue Flame Transmission from Inner Earth Legends is not fantasy, it is ignition. Whispered among ancient Tibetan lamas, Native American wisdom keepers, and secret Gnostic sects, this transmission speaks of a light not born from fire, but from consciousness itself, a sentient energy said to pulse from the heart of the earth, hidden deep within subterranean cities like Agartha and Shambhala. The flame is blue because it burns without destruction. It is not heat, it is memory, pure electrical knowing. Those who encountered the flame described it not as vision, but as contact. They were not shown, they were entered. It began as a vibration in the solar plexus, a sudden stillness in the mind, a ringing in the bones. Then came the light, soft, bright, infinite. It did not blind, it revealed. Every lie, every mask, every inherited trauma dissolved in its presence like fog before the sun. It did not judge, it absorbed, it mirrored, and then it gave. The transmission occurred not through speech, but through resonance. The flame passed from being to being, through breath, through gaze, through proximity. It could not be forced, only invited. It sought those who had emptied themselves of need, of ego, of noise. Once received, the initiate could heal with presence, silence crowds with stillness, and dream with precision. Some gained access to Earth's crystalline data fields, hearing the songs of tectonic plates, sensing the pulse of forgotten rivers beneath cities. But the flame came with one demand: truth, brutal, unrelenting, soul-shattering truth, because once the blue light touches your heart, it stays, it watches, and it will burn away everything that isn't you until only what is eternal remains. Etheric blood, decoding for DNA clairvoyance. Etheric blood decoding is not divination, it is revelation. Hidden within every drop of human blood is a multi-dimensional record, a living archive of soul contracts, past incarnations, ancestral trauma, and unrealized potential. This practice, once known only to high initiates of PreAtlantean priesthoods and later buried within Eastern Tantric alchemy, allows the practitioner to read the soul's blueprint by unlocking the quantum frequencies held in the blood's etheric double. Blood is not just fluid, it is light encoded in biology. Each molecule carries signatures not only from your lineage, but from every realm your soul has touched. Through etheric decoding, one can bypass physical DNA and access the vibrational strands that science cannot detect, those encoded with clairvoyance, memory retrieval, energy manipulation, and more. The ritual requires a sacred space where magnetics have been neutralized. The blood, usually a single drop from the heart finger, is placed on a crystal charge under eclipse. The practitioner enters trance through breath and vibration, often using monochord drones or binaural hums. When tuned precisely, the blood's light body unveils itself, forming patterns and holograms within the third eye's field. Visions come fast, names you've never heard but know, places you've never been but ache for. Emotional waves crash without context, yet every tear is data. You see who you were, what you carry, and what you were coded to become. But this sight is not passive. Once seen, the path accelerates. The blood begins to speak, subtly, relentlessly, and you realize you were never just a person. You were a message written in stars, pulsing beneath your skin, waiting. Frequency map, stored in crystal skulls. The frequency map stored in the crystal skulls is not data. It is a living architecture of consciousness encoded in silence and light. These skulls, carved from quartz so pure they defy replication even by today's technology, were not created with tools. They were grown, sculpted through vibration by ancient hands that understood how sound and intent could shape matter. They were not relics, they were receivers. Each skull houses a unique harmonic code, a piece of a planetary map that does not describe geography, but frequency, specific vibrational signatures of sacred sites, energy gates, and human DNA templates. When activated, they resonate with a pitch that cannot be heard, only felt. The chest tightens, the skin prickles, the mind stills, and in that stillness, data flows, not as thought but as knowing. The ancients used the skulls as anchors, placed at intersections of Earth's ley lines. They tuned entire regions to frequencies that could elevate consciousness, heal the body, and repel destructive forces. But they also stored memory of civilizations long erased, of celestial timelines, of origin points buried under millennia of forgetting. Each skull is a library, but it only opens when the seeker's frequency matches its key. When held with reverence, some skulls have emitted light, temperature shifts, and disembodied voices speaking languages never documented. Others show visions, not dreams, but overlays of time collapsed into now. They do not teach, they remember. And once they recognize you, once your resonance completes the pattern, you become part of the map, a carrier, a transmitter, a keeper of the hum that once held the world in balance and might again. Dravidian liturgy for pineal activation. The Dravidian liturgy for pineal activation is not prayer, it is precision, drawn from a pre-Sanskritic era when language was vibration and temples were instruments tuned to the human soul. This liturgy was created to awaken the dormant eye between the eyes, the pineal gland, the throne of inner sight. But unlike modern practices, diluted through repetition and misinterpretation, this liturgy does not ask the pineal to open, it commands it. Each syllable in the chant is a sonic key, aligned with ancient cymatic patterns passed down orally by temple adepts who spoke less than they listened. The liturgy begins in a whisper, low, guttural, and rhythmic, pulsing in time with the earth's Schumann resonance. As the tones rise, they are aimed not outward but inward toward the center of the skull, where calcification locks intuition in a prison of stillness. Sacred oils, infused with sandalwood, blue lotus, and serpent root, are anointed onto the brow as specific hand mudras are formed to channel current. The vibrations travel not through air, but through bone, igniting the pineal like flint on steel. Pressure builds behind the eyes. Vision begins, not of the world, but of what lies beneath it. Geometry spiral, colors unseen in waking life unfold. Thought becomes light. Some initiates cry, others levitate in stillness. Most are changed forever, because the liturgy is not sung to awaken the gland. It is sung to remember it, to remind this ancient jewel in the brain that it was once a star, and when it remembers, it opens, not like a door, but like a universe. Star navigation magic of the Phoenicians. The star navigation magic of the Phoenicians was not simply celestial mapping, it was communion. These ancient mariners were not just traders and seafarers, they were sky readers, initiates of a stellar art that merged astronomy with mysticism. While history credits them with mastering the seas, what remains hidden is how they truly sailed, not by sight but by resonance. The stars did not guide them, the stars spoke to them. Their ships were carved with symbols not for luck, but for alignment. Sigils encoded with constellational frequencies tuned to specific routes, seasons, and celestial events. These sigils, when charged with ritual breath and cedar smoke chants, created harmonic fields that allowed navigators to enter trance states at sea. In these states, time slowed, the ocean quieted, and in the stillness, the stars pulsed with soundless tone, each constellation a choir, each alignment a key. The Phoenician navigator didn't look at the stars, he listened. Orion's belt hummed with urgency. Sirius whispered of storms. The Pleiades shimmered with ancestral memory. Each direction corresponded not to magnetic points, but to spiritual gates, allowing ships to pass through invisible corridors where waves softened and the distance between thought and destination collapsed. They called it traveling on light's memory. Initiates guarded this knowledge fiercely, passing it through bloodlines and dreams. Symbols were tattooed on the tongue, hidden in shipwood, encoded in lullabies. But when the world began to lose its ear for the stars, the magic fell silent. And yet, sometimes at sea, in perfect darkness, a sailor feels it again, a hum in the bones, a whisper in the stars, and a direction that needs no compass. Hypercube theory for soul containment. The hypercube theory for soul containment is not abstract geometry. It is a prison of perfection, rooted in suppressed Gnostic cosmology and later echoed in forbidden mathematical treatises from the Renaissance. This theory proposes that the soul, once infinite, radiant, and unbound, was compressed into a tesseract, a fourth-dimensional cube designed not to protect consciousness, but to trap it, not through chains, but through structure, not through force, but symmetry. The hypercube is not visible. It exists just beyond the veil of perception, nested in the energetic field around the human body. Its walls are not stone. They are time, memory, belief, and language. Each face of the cube represents a dimension of limitation: linear time, programmed identity, inherited fear, artificial morality, illusion of separation, and false light. The seventh and eighth faces, the unseen ones, are self-denial and consent. When the soul incarnates into physical form, it is encoded with the hypercube's framework. Its shape shapes you. Your decisions loop. Your wounds repeat. You think you're evolving, but you're moving within a cage of mirrored cause and effect. Even death doesn't free you. It resets the cube. The soul reboots, reborn with the same architecture until awareness cracks the walls from the inside. Mystics who have pierced it describe a moment of unbearable silence, followed by the disintegration of identity. Space folds, thought unravels. What remains is vast, formless presence, terrifying in its freedom. But escape is not through rejection. It is through recognition, because the hypercube is fed by resistance, and when you stop pushing against its walls, you begin to remember the cage is made of you, and so is the key. 9 circles ritual used for dimensional rifting. The 9 circles ritual is not symbolic. It is structural, pulled from remnants of pre-Babylonian cults and later weaponized by secret hermetic cabals. This ritual was designed not for summoning, but for tearing. A precise method of dimensional rifting. It opens fractures in the veil between realities using concentric energetic fields, each circle acting as both barrier and bridge. It is not performed, it is entered. The space must be geometrically perfect, the floor marked with sigils etched in black salt, ash, or blood-infused chalk. Each circle corresponds to a vibrational layer of the human psyche: fear, desire, memory, shame, will, silence, ecstasy, detachment, and self-erasure. The practitioner must step through each with absolute intention. There is no turning back. At the edge of the 9th circle, identity begins to dissolve. Time becomes elastic. The air thickens. What stands beyond the last ring is not darkness. It is static. Reality flickers. Light bleeds sideways. Sounds emerge that have never touched the earth. The cracking laughter of your unborn self, the voice of places that don't yet exist. This is the rift, the tear. If the ritual is performed precisely, a corridor opens, not seen but felt, a pressure like hands moving through your spine. Some cross it and return with knowledge, visions, new languages in their sleep. Others return splintered, haunted by echoes that don't belong to them, hunted by reflections that move before they do. And some never return at all, because the 9 circles do not just open space, they open you. And once open, the universe might decide to answer, or enter, or both. Immortal gene suppression reversal technique. The immortal gene suppression reversal technique is not science fiction. It is forgotten biology. Hidden within every human cell lies a dormant strand of genetic code, an ancient sequence often dismissed as junk DNA. But it is not junk. It is memory, a biological key left behind by those who came before, who once walked in bodies that did not age, did not decay, did not die. This code was silenced, not by nature, but by design. In pre-deluge mystery schools from Sumer to the Indus Valley, initiates were taught that mortality is not the default. It is a condition, and that condition can be reversed. The technique begins with the cleansing of electromagnetic interference, removing synthetic frequencies that keep the gene dormant. Practitioners then enter deep neural entrainment using sacred sound, often 432 Hz, layered with golden ratio harmonics, which sends coded vibrations into the cellular matrix. Then comes the breath, the spiral breath, drawn through the crown, coiled through the spine, and released with intention into the solar plexus. This is not meditation, it is ignition. The body begins to pulse with electric heat, organs vibrate, the cells remember. At the peak, a flash of internal light is seen behind closed eyes, violet, white, blinding, and for a moment, death feels irrelevant. But the reversal is not only physical. Emotional programs tied to aging, grief, guilt, identity, entropy must be dissolved, because immortality is not just a state, it is a frequency, and only those who match its resonance can hold it without burning. Once reactivated, the gene does not just extend life, it rewrites it. Time bends, healing accelerates, and the body becomes what it was always meant to be, a vessel for light, not a countdown to darkness. Babylonian demonic summoning texts in cuneiform. The Babylonian demonic summoning texts in cuneiform are not myth. They are invocation architecture carved into clay with trembling hands under blood-red moons. These tablets, some hidden beneath ziggurats and others sealed in vaults even modern archaeologists refuse to speak of, contain syllabic formulas capable of bypassing human will and tearing open gateways to entities older than the gods of Olympus or Eden. These were not demons of moral tale, they were intelligences, raw, ancient, and incomprehensibly focused. Each tablet follows a structure of unlocking, a name, a title, a location in the astral hierarchy, and a binding frequency encoded phonetically in Sumerian Akkadian hybrids. These aren't simply written words, they are vibrational blueprints. When spoken correctly, often in sync with fire, sulfur, and copper resonance, they create a sympathetic echo across dimensions. You don't call the demon, you match its breath. The rituals demanded more than materials. They demanded sacrifice, not of blood, but of self. The summoner would fast for days, ingest bitter alkaloids, isolate in darkness, then kneel in a circle of etched sigils where each phoneme carried the weight of cosmic consequence. If the entity responded, the air would thicken, candles would bend, a voice, sometimes inside the skull, sometimes in the room, would begin to speak in ancient syntax, naming you. These texts were hidden for a reason. Improper pronunciation could invite parasitic forms that burrow into thought. Some entities never leave, others leave marks, on the skin, in the dreams, in the lineage, because in Babylon, the greatest power wasn't prayer, it was precision, and the clay still waits, humming quietly under sand, ready to be read by a voice that remembers the shape of fear. Sound levitation using pre-Sanskrit frequencies. Sound levitation using pre-Sanskrit frequencies is not fantasy, it is resonance mastery. Long before written language, there existed vibrational codes, syllables not born of culture, but of cosmos. These frequencies, now buried beneath mantras and mispronounced chants, were once wielded by an ancient priest-engineer cast to defy gravity, not with force, but with alignment. They didn't build monuments by lifting stone, they sang them into place. These syllables, raw, guttural, pure, were not words, They were sound equations, each tuned to a harmonic that matched the atomic rhythm of matter. Practitioners stood in geometric arrays around objects as massive as obelisks or stone blocks, aligning their voices like beams of coherent light. When the tones merged, the object pulsed. It trembled. Then, as if forgetting it was heavy, it rose. This technique was no ritual. It was precision, pitch, tempo, breath control, all calibrated with astronomical timing and the Earth's magnetic cycles. Even a heartbeat out of sync could collapse the field. But when perfect, the air shimmered, matter responded, and stone became weightless. Modern explorers have discovered temple ruins with no tool marks, no lifting paths, no mechanical explanation. These are echoes of the forgotten song, and deep in Tibetan lore, in whispered tales from the Andes, in glyphs that resemble waveforms, the knowledge survives, hidden, misread, waiting, because sound does not just carry meaning, it carries power. And when that power is spoken in the right tone, with the right heart, to the right stone, gravity listens and lets go. Astral Web Entanglement Navigation System. The Astral Web Entanglement Navigation System is not theoretical. It is a hidden infrastructure of consciousness, a luminous lattice stretching across dimensions, binding minds, places, and timelines through threads more ancient than gravity. Known to the dreamwalkers of ancient Chaldea, the serpent sages of Mesoamerica, and Tibetan Phowa masters, this system allowed the initiated not just to travel in spirit, but to navigate the vast ether with accuracy, intent, and purpose. The web is not made of energy alone. It is made of thought, crystallized by emotion, woven by intention. Every soul is entangled in it from birth, anchored by emotional events, trauma, love, and memory. These threads glow with personal resonance, creating a unique astral signature that can be tracked like coordinates across the infinite. But without training, most travelers drift, pulled by desire, fear, or projection. They wander. The navigation system changes that. Practitioners enter trance through heartbeat synchronization, breath suppression, and sigil gazing until the body fades and the field appears, an iridescent mesh that hums with possibility. Using emotional resonance as a compass and sacred glyphs encoded into memory as steering tools, they glide along the threads, bypassing false realms, psychic traps, and looping dreams. Masters of this system could retrieve lost souls, access timelines not yet born, and plant seeds of change in the sleeping minds of kings. But each jump came at a cost: time dilation, identity erosion, the risk of entanglement with something that hunts through the web's currents. Because the web is alive, it remembers, and it watches who dares move with intent. Those who do become more than dreamers. They become architects of reality itself. Golden Serpent Cult, originating in Ugarit. The Golden Serpent Cult, originating in ancient Ugarit, was not a fertility cult, nor a pagan rite. It was a consciousness movement disguised as worship. Beneath the temples of Baal and Anat, behind the myths of gods and monsters, a secret order moved in silence. They revered not the serpent of temptation, but the serpent of ascent, the golden coil of awakened energy that slumbers at the base of the spine, waiting to rise like fire through bone. Their symbol was not just a snake, it was the Ouroboros devouring its own limitations. Their rituals were not sacrifices of blood, but offerings of identity, burned in trance and shadow. Initiates were chosen in childhood, marked by strange dreams and spontaneous trances. They were taken to limestone sanctuaries carved beneath the earth, where golden coils were etched into the stone floors, not art, but resonance maps. The golden serpent was not worshipped, it was awakened through rhythmic breath, chanted syllables known only to the cult, and the ingestion of sacred oils infused with desert roots and metals. The body became a vessel for ascension. Energy surged upward in waves, coiling through each energy center until the skull ignited in silent flame. Visions followed of the cosmos inside the body, of past and future lives unraveling in the blink of an eye. But the cult was hunted, its symbols erased, its texts burned, because the serpent they raised could not be controlled. It made followers ungovernable, radiant, free. Yet the path endures in dreams of gold spirals, in spontaneous awakening, in those who feel fire rise from the base of their spine and know the serpent still lives and it remembers. Stargate instructions from the Lemurian Triangle. The Stargate instructions from the Lemurian Triangle are not fantasy. They are activation blueprints encoded in Earth's most ancient geometry. The Lemurian Triangle, a submerged and tectonically volatile zone connecting the waters of Hawaii, Easter Island, and New Zealand, holds the remnants of an extraterrestrial human alliance so advanced it made physical distance irrelevant. These instructions were not written, they were sung into the crystalline bedrock of the ocean floor, waiting to be reawakened when consciousness was ready. The Lemurians didn't travel through space, they shifted frequency. Their stargates were not built, they were harmonized, open through precise alignment of tone, intention, and magnetized quartz monoliths, now buried beneath coral and volcanic ash. The instructions for their operation are embedded in light codes, repeating number sequences seen in dreams, geoglyph patterns visible only from above, and sudden downloads of unknown languages that burn behind the eyes. Each stargate was tuned to both a celestial body and a genetic lineage. The traveler had to match the gate's vibration, not only with tools, but with soul resonance. Before activation, initiates underwent deep purification, physical fasting, emotional shedding, and vibrational imprinting through mantric breathwork. When ready, they stood within the triangle, spoke the unspeakable sequence, and vanished, not through disappearance but transmutation. They became frequency. They became light. Modern seekers have found fragments, obsidian discs with spiral etchings, underwater stone alignments that resist erosion, and channeled instructions that echo across cultures. But few can translate, because these stargates are not doors for escape. They are tests. You cannot open them unless you've already left behind everything that anchors you to fear. And once you step through, you don't just leave the earth. You remember you were never only human. Time reversal spell called the Mirror of Kronos. The Mirror of Kronos is not a metaphor. It is a forbidden time reversal spell, whispered through fractured pages of Greco-Egyptian grimoires, buried beneath layers of allegory and cosmic dread. Named for the primordial god of time, not the fatherly Kronos of myth, but Kronos, the devourer of moments. This spell does not simply rewind events. It forces reality to collapse inward, dragging the past into the present, like a reflection pulling you backward through the glass. The ritual begins not with candles or altars, but with surrender. The practitioner must stare into a polished, obsidian mirror that has been buried under moonless sky for 13 nights and bathed in their own tears. No tools, no incantations, just breath, memory, and the unbearable desire to undo. Then the chant, a vibrational code not in Greek, not in Latin, but in a tongue older than stars. 5 syllables that vibrate against the rib cage like chains breaking in reverse. As they're spoken, time fractures. The body goes still, the air thickens, and the moment you wish to erase begins to bleed through. But it is not perfect. The Mirror of Kronos doesn't erase, it rewrites. Change one strand and others shift with it. You may return to the moment before the wound only to find the scar elsewhere. You may bring someone back only to lose a piece of yourself. Time has memory, and Kronos demands balance. Many who attempt the spell become unmoored, trapped in loops of almosts and never-weres, their identities dissolving like smoke in their own reflection. Because the mirror doesn't show you time, it shows you the price of tampering with it. and once you've looked, it never stops looking back. Jed Pillar Harmonic Blueprint. The Jed Pillar Harmonic Blueprint is not symbolic art. It is the schematics of human ascension encoded into architecture, frequency, and spine. Known as the spinal column of Osiris, the Jed was more than a religious icon in ancient Egypt. It was a harmonic device, a resonance tower designed to stabilize energy fields, restore life force, and bridge earth and sky within the human body. Each ring of the Jed is a vibrational octave. Together, they form a sonic ladder that mirrors the chakras in the vertebrae, but with a precision modern anatomy has never mapped. The ancient priesthood didn't just venerate the Jed, they used it through sound, through movement, through breath designed to vibrate each harmonic rung of the inner pillar until it aligned with the cosmic axis, the invisible current that binds all living things. Rituals involve standing in precise geometric formations aligned to solar, lunar, and stellar positions, while deep toning echoed from carved chambers lined with crystalline sandstone. The tones weren't chants, they were codes. As the frequencies rose, the spine would begin to vibrate, unlocking dormant DNA and restoring ancient memories stored in the nervous system. Some levitated, others spoke languages they had never learned. A few vanished in pure light. The Jed's blueprint wasn't lost. It was hidden, fragmented across papyri, temple murals, and embedded in the dimensions of sarcophagi. Its shape is etched into the soul. When one hums with full intent, drawing energy from the earth through the feet and exhaling through the crown, the Jed awakens. And once it stands fully within you, you are no longer just vertical. You are eternal, anchored to the cosmos, alive with memory, and aligned with the source current that never stops singing. Venusian Light Body Rebirth Sequence. The Venusian Light Body Rebirth sequence is not spiritual fantasy. It is a celestial rite of transfiguration, once practiced by beings from the higher harmonic planes of Venus before the planet descended into its current dense veil. These luminous entities, called the Arai in lost Atlantean texts, did not die. They converted flesh into frequency, thought into structure. They left behind no bones, only vibration, and the sequence they followed was encoded into the human soul, waiting to be remembered. This sequence is not done with movement, but with stillness so deep it becomes radiant. The initiate begins in silence. 3 days of fasting from light, sound, and speech. The body becomes void. Then, at dawn on the 4th day, they stand barefoot on living ground as the first sunlight strikes their heart. The breath changes. A tone is spoken, not sung, but exhaled through the heart center. This tone is the ignition. The chakras, 7 known, 5 hidden, begin to spiral in opposite directions. The spine becomes a pillar of light. Cells vibrate faster. The skin feels as if it's falling away, but there is no pain. Memory floods in, of stars, of other lifetimes, of promises made to the soul before the fall into matter, and then the heart bursts, not in agony, but in luminous unfolding. Those who complete the sequence become different. Their touch calms, their gaze heals. They speak less, but their presence says everything. They no longer live through time. Time begins to curve around them, because this isn't ascension, it's return. Venus remembers, and when your light matches hers, she calls you home, not to a planet, but to the being you were before gravity taught you to forget. Forbidden glyph used by the silent ones. The forbidden glyph used by the silent ones is not a symbol. It is a trigger, etched in inkless impressions into stone, bone, and forgotten skin. This glyph does not communicate. It commands. It was wielded by a vanished priesthood known only as the Silent Ones, beings who renounce voice in exchange for power over thought, time, and perception. Their silence wasn't ascetic, it was strategic. Words could lie, the glyph could not. The glyph itself defies replication. It shifts shape depending on the viewer. Some see spirals, others jagged lines, others an empty space so heavy it hums. It is not drawn, it is revealed, often through trance, trauma, or near-death states. Once seen, it imprints into the psyche like a seed. It waits dormant until activated by emotional threshold, deep fear, deep love, or utter surrender. When activated, the glyph doesn't speak, it unfolds. Thought collapses into clarity. Time slows, then fractures. You feel something behind your eyes begin to watch, not with malice, with recognition. The glyph is a beacon, a signature that tells the astral realm you remember something you shouldn't. Some experience downloads of alien language, sudden visions of impossible architecture, or a ringing that never fully stops. Others disappear for hours or days with no memory of where they went, but eyes that seem to have seen eternity blink. The silent ones used it to erase, to protect, to unlock, but they knew its price. The glyph doesn't just open a door, it leaves one open behind you. And once marked, you are never truly alone again, because the glyph doesn't vanish, it waits, and it listens.